Day, we call it. Anyway, those that grew up in, I don't even know if that was exclusively a Southern California thing, maybe, but one of my, it's like a unofficial holiday for
Well,
sugar
now
addicts. Yeah.
now if it fits within a certain threshold, you could bring any container and fill it up on that day,
I
which
know,
is,
right?
part of the hoot.
That doesn't get more American than that. Bring in a bucket and fill it full of Slurpee and give yourself diabetes. It's called Diabetes Awareness Day.
Tyler, David
Yeah.
is in the room.
David,
David Cheng is in the room.
oh my goodness.
Get him up.
Okay, well, we understand that David might not be able to, did he just run away? There he is on stage. Welcome
He's on
back,
stage.
Dave.
Welcome
Oh,
back,
Hey
welcome
boys,
back,
David.
how
Hey,
are
David
you?
David.
Chang.
How are you?
We
Welcome.
miss you
Oh,
so much,
Lay low,
there we
my
David.
go.
friend. Lay low, my friend.
Laylo, you can pretend that you don't even know us.
Lay low.
Who's this David
Just
guy?
say
Never met him. Never heard him. Never met him. How are you, sir?
I am not answering questions about Didi.
this is David Epstein. This is
Yes.
David Epstein from Israel.
Change the title to your name. You don't. You have no Asian accent. This is David Chang. He is Filipino by way of Mexico and living in Iceland. And it's nice to have you all the way from Iceland. What's it like being a Filipino living in Iceland, David?
Really fucking cold.
Yeah. So, um, so there's a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on in the news, which we will get into. And great to see you back, David. And let's jump into some of these. Let's start off not on the most important news. Let's start off on what everyone else is talking about, your coworkers, so that you can get up to speed and embarrass the hell out of them for not really knowing, having the benefit of joining us here. And the biggest news headline, not the most important, not the most, and certainly not the most interesting, but the biggest headline at the moment is the Pentagon has canceled the $10 billion JEDI, the JEDI cloud contract that was awarded to Microsoft, but faced legal challenges from Amazon, announced new multi-vendor contract. And it's actually quite simple. Basically, this all came during the former Trump administration, where the Pentagon is on a rather older computer system and wanted to upgrade to the cloud, as we call it. And there's really only very few cloud providers who could service this, the Pentagon, namely Microsoft and Amazon. And that's according to the Pentagon. Apparently, Google isn't even able to participate as a potential vendor in this. So under Donald Trump, who absolutely hates Jeff Bezos and was not shy at all about his hatred of Jeff Bezos, who was the boss of Amazon, guess who won the contract? Microsoft. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not, because there's really only two. It's a 50-50 chance that, But anyways, when Microsoft won this $10 billion cloud contract, naturally, Amazon said, hey, that's not fair. You're only picking Microsoft because the president hates our CEO, which might be true. We don't know. So the big headline today is that the Pentagon says, under a new Joe Biden administration, before it goes into effect, says, okay, we're going to cancel the Microsoft contract and redo it, start over. It's like a foot race, a 100-yard dash. Everyone come back to the starting line, and we're going to start over again, and you can both apply, and then we're going to see who has the better system, right? So they're just going to redo the foot race, calling everyone back to the starting line, and they're going to restart. And then they're going to see if Microsoft wins it, or if Amazon wins it this time. And both parties, have their PR teams with their carefully crafted quotes. And to Microsoft's credit, they're actually being very magnanimous and saying, we're confident they picked us last time. We're confident they'll pick us again. Yeah, that sounds good.
Tyler,
Yeah.
this Justin's probably absolute best to unpick this with you, maybe on the politics room or here.
Mm-hmm.
But this the whole Lena Khan coming on, right? As Lena Khan young, I don't know, what is it, 32, 37-year-old.
Mm-hmm. 32, yeah.
I'm just looking at, 32, right? FTC chair,
Yep.
absolutely like explicit antitrust research, very credible research person,
Yeah.
did it research at university, etc. Like, so she's on board, and Amazon's been calling for her to, there's
Recuse
this kind
herself.
of war.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because she's like, being too connected with
Well,
it and has a point of view.
she has publicly, I mean, she's stated her rather disdain for Amazon as a massive kind of
Right.
monopolistic entity. So yeah, they
So when
are
you've got the
saying
FTC chair
right,
who's going to be coming after Amazon, right, one
right,
way or the other,
right,
she's going to be, and you've got you can't let Amazon have this thing, sitting there going, oh, but you just gave this to Microsoft, right?
right,
You guys are not, we're not in the game, so
right,
now that's off the table, right? So that'll help
right,
for Lena Khan. That'll
right.
help.
And the other thing to say is, like, there's going to be, this is fought in two dimensions. One is like the numbers, of course they'll do like an RFP, and there'll be an explicit scoring criteria, and there'll be a vendor selection. They'll have a consultancy, probably about 20 consultancies sitting crawling all over it. The data will say Amazon got 10 points, Microsoft got 9.5 points. So one dimension of the numbers, but then Cal, your dimension is the real dimension, even though if the stated thing is like all this pure process. I'm just saying what everyone else knows, but just thought I'd underscore it.
Yes, sir. So before we get into Ken's fantastic article about Didi and the stock option sneakery happening there, which is actually kind of brilliant, and what that implies. Cal, you had some recent headlines that you found, because since we met last time, plug your ears, David. The China's Xi, the Xi Meister, takes the headline from Reuters is that China's Xi takes a dig at U.S. in speech to political parties around the world, right? And you want to touch on this one?
No, go ahead. I mean, it's just
Okay.
yeah, go ahead. Just
He
theme it in.
basically
Yeah.
made the comment that and here there was a couple comments actually. One is that he urged countries worldwide to oppose any other country that engages in what he calls technology blockades. And as Reuters says, it's an allusion to the United States, to the U.S., which views China as a strategic competitor. And he's referring to essentially the fact that we blocked Huawei and how he's trying to discourage countries from participating in that. And many countries did participate in that. And he's basically, it's a little bit, I find it a little bit surprising that he's even saying this out loud, because I would interpret that as a sign that this blockade is actually affecting them, and he's kind of admitting that. And then he went on to, it turns into a bit of a rant where he's saying, we should ignore countries who are trying to act selfishly by pretending to be acting collaboratively in disguise. He says unilaterally and multilaterally. And let's find the quote, because I don't want to misquote him. Then we can get into interpreting exactly what we think he meant in that. I need to find a different version of G. Let's see here. That Reuters article was paywalled that you had tweeted, and so I just need to find a better version of that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's right. Common ground with foreign nations. Yeah, Xi touts parties' common ground with that's Bloomberg, Global Times. Here we go. You got a few different sources here. Make sure they all line up in what they're reporting here. And during a summit with leaders of more than 500 political parties, Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, urged attendees to uphold multilateralism, seek cooperation in addressing current challenges that humanity faces, and pursue development. And The quote is, "We need to enable all countries to step up development and cooperation and see to it that the fruits of development are shared by all," and calling for joint efforts to bring greater equity, higher efficiency, and stronger synergy to global development. In an attempt to promote human progress, she also stressed that the CPC is willing to contribute more Chinese solutions and Chinese strength to the poverty reduction process worldwide. And the Iranian ambassador to China told the Global Times during the summit that when the Chinese Party was founded 100 years ago, China, like Iran used to be, was invaded by foreign troops, people humiliated by foreigners, but the achievements of the Chinese are tremendous, and such experience should be shared with other political parties. And here, Xi's call for correct views on differences between China and EU, a timely guidance for ties amid downward spiral. Give me 2 more seconds here. The theory immortalized New discussed it. Here we go. The Guardian. This will work. Here it is, the technology blockades. Chinese president tells summit involving political parties of 160 nations that any country stopping another's development must be opposed. Xi Jinping urged political parties worldwide to oppose any country that engages in technology blockades, an allusion to the U.S., which views China as a strategic competitor, and as President Joe Biden administration has sought support from like-minded democracies, including the EU and Japan, to coordinate a tougher stance against China, Beijing has doubled down on seeking support and affirmation from friendly nations such as North Korea and Serbia. Together, we must oppose all acts of unilateralism in the name of multilateralism, hegemony, and power politics, Xi told a virtual gathering of representatives of 500 parties from 160 countries, such as Russia, Zimbabwe, Cuba, and Burkina Faso on Tuesday. Looking from the angle of my country first, the world is narrow and crowded and often full of fierce competition, Xi said in an apparent reference to former U.S. President Donald Trump's America First policy. Xi renewed a call to work towards building a community with a shared future of mankind and said any country that engaged in technology blockades and developmental decoupling should be rejected. Chinese diplomats have often criticized the U.S. for allegedly trying to hamper China's development by cutting off its access to U.S. technology. In a speech last week to a domestic audience in Beijing's Tiananmen Square, Xi said foreign forces trying to bully China would have their heads bashed bloody against the Great Wall of Steel forged by over 1.4 billion Chinese people. And any other quotes? No, that's the last quote on that. So that's from The Guardian, which that was the one that covered all of the quotes in one article. So I'll retweet that one so that you can.
Thanks for doing that, Tyler. Just one thing on that one.
Yeah.
Just it's the frequency of it, right? It's coming thick and fast in the last week,
it's
2
interesting.
weeks.
Yeah, because
right? This stuff is just coming at us.
Yeah, it's happening quickly. That's a great point. Which is this? It used to be kind of hot takes from world leaders generally don't happen multiple times in 1 week. So having the 100-year anniversary birthday party celebration where, the bashing your heads bloody, kind of strong for a world leader to use phrasing such as that, and kind of unambiguous, one might say, and then to follow it up, just 3 or 4 days later in more clear, lucid terms about, we should retaliate and block America, is what he's saying. But, and the meeting is with, the more of his friendly, because in the 100-year anniversary birthday party celebration, it was pretty much just Chinese, it was kind of a Chinese only affair. And in this particular meeting with, interesting that, from 160 countries, 500 parties, that in that context, it's an international audience, and to the international audience, his message is simply, hey, if the U.S. is going to not be nice to China, then we should collaborate. And it's essentially the what would you call it? For, the call to kind of form
Alliance building.
alliance building.
It's
Yeah,
just it's constant. Yeah, it's alliance building. It's like, we're here.
yeah.
This is very, very. I mean,
It's the
Justin
three
would be.
worlds I talk about all the time, right? Like
Which
that's what's
three
going
worlds?
on.
Yeah,
Well,
but
it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
China,
yeah.
but
the currencies, right, and everything.
this is why I've been telling everyone to read the Peter Zeihan's Disunited Nations now since coming into Clubhouse. It's my only book recommendation. And if you are not the book reading type, which in the age of audiobooks, not a lot of people are, but you can go on YouTube and get Peter Zeihan's Disunited Nations, video lectures, which he gives all around the world at very high profile events. It's like a 90-minute video, and he'll summarize the book for you visually with PowerPoint in 90 minutes. And he predicts all of this. This whole thing was for him easily foreseeable and predictable. And he says what's coming next after this. And that's what I find really interesting, like incredibly interesting. But essentially the China versus US kind of working out who's on whose side. That's sort of the situation that we find ourselves in at the moment. Is the U.S. reached out to all its allies and said, "Hey, you shouldn't use Huawei's 5G." And now, in this speech that was just given yesterday, that China's saying we should collaborate. I mean, and it's not a coincidence that Iran is quoted in the article, and Cuba and all of America's not so strong allies will likely side with China in this. So it'll be Cuba and Iran and Russia and China's friends versus America and its friends, and that's what's going to happen.
And China plays like, so. I put I think Shell shared it earlier in the week, but now there's a Chinese firm behind the acquisition of UK largest chip plant is state
Right.
backed,
That's a
right, in the UK.
separate
Yeah,
headline. Right. Yeah. Great.
no,
Great. Yeah.
separate headline. No,
Let's.
my
No.
point,
No.
my
No. But
point,
let's go into it.
yeah,
That's
no.
related. Yeah.
Yeah, so what it is, it's like, it's just, we're seeing the headlines, right?
Yep.
Clearly behind the scenes, there's a massive play. Go is my only analogy that I think of, which is like a game that, you play in Asia quite a lot, which is you put your chips in different places. Literally, you put your chips, right? That's funny. I just amused myself.
That was
Yeah,
good, Carl. I got it. I
no,
got it.
no,
I
no.
love
It's
it.
just sorry. I just rarely amuse myself. So anyway, so yeah, you put your chips in different places, right, around the world, and then you pull together your alliance, right, and then suddenly it all pulls together, right, because that's how Go works. You have your places, you get your chips, and bang, you got the whole board, right. That's kind of almost happened in Africa, unfortunately. Right, in my view, I'm sure others, but that's kind of like you got your chips. Now you're taking out this weak player in Europe, UK, right? And you're taking them out because they're vulnerable. They're like, oh, we've got to be global because we're global, right? You screwed up your whole, opportunity to have leverage, and so now you're going to be picked out by the Chinese, right? The US might not pay attention, or they might, I don't know. So yeah, there's a global game of Go that they're playing out. And this is one little piece, right? Chinese firm behind the acquisition of UK, state-backed, of course. Sounds small, right? The chips are small at the beginning, and that's interesting. And then the whole Bitcoin like crampdown. There's another headline that just how intense it is. And I know David's gone off, and he's going to make the right calls. Or he might be there, but
I'm here.
so I don't mean to compromise you, David. Just jump off the stage if this compromises you. Just I want to say just so the whole chip.
He's a
You know,
Filipino from Iceland, so I don't think
Oh
he's
yeah,
got
of
much to
course.
worry
So
about.
he's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, he's fine. Yeah, yeah. He's smart. He's smart, and he's got serious guanxi. Like I'm like, you gotta know David. It's like if he can stay on here anyway. So this yeah. So this and the chip thing, and Christine's not here yet, but I liked her comment on Twitter around this is about capital control because a lot of the Chinese are taking the money out, right? You don't see this people saying that, but other than informally. But part of her view on that is on Twitter is that people just stopping the Chinese taking the money out. That's part of the issue there. But there you go. It's interesting. All interesting.
Can I quickly come in?
Yeah,
So,
1 second.
Cal,
Go ahead,
sure.
Karim.
Cal, I totally agree with you. It's not just about the technology, it's also on the ground. I think this is very different China, very, very different China. China has never actually came into the diplomacy and, foreign minister visiting different countries of the Middle East. And, Afghanistan is the key to this whole equation. The whole region now is going into the Chinese camp. So you have to look at it more deeply how the geopolitical situation is emerging now. So, for instance, just to give you an example, I actually held a room about 6 hours, went on about Afghanistan. So this question that whether US was doing something about it or not, I actually tweeted that, Tyler, you can actually look at that tweet. The last plane left the Bagram Air Base at midnight without telling the commander, was going to take over.
All
So
right.
that's the situation. That's the situation right now
You're
over
talking about
there. So
Afghanistan, yeah?
correct. I'm
Right.
talking
So
about
for those,
Afghanistan.
yeah, just
Yeah.
help people who don't know speak much more clearly for my parents in the audience who aren't up to speed, that America overnight kind of left Afghanistan without even saying goodbye, right?
Didn't even turn out the lights.
That's what
Exactly.
right.
And the
And
second thing happened.
to the
Sorry. Second
surprise of
thing.
the Afghan
Yeah.
army, even, right? And
And
then within hours, China has arrived, right? That's the new.
And just a day before, and then yesterday,
Uh-huh.
about 1,000 or so Afghani army actually retreated back into Tajikistan. And, that was a major, major news. They actually literally saved their lives. They just gone over the border. And here you go, Afghan. And this is very, very surprising. Taliban has never actually gone into the north, even when they were ruling the whole country back in 90s. Now they are in Badakhshan and all the northern part of Afghanistan. They are actually taking so fast. And I think CNN did the story a couple of days ago that by 6 months, their estimation is that within 6 months, Taliban is going to be ruling the country. And they are already having talks with Chinese.
Right.
And
So here's
yeah.
let me tweet out the headline. It's from Financial Times. It says China watches Afghanistan anxiously as the U.S. withdraws. Beijing is ready to cooperate with Taliban to prevent chaos across its border, diplomats say. And I'll tweet that. It says talks with the Taliban and an eye on Xinjiang. Beijing had held talks with the Taliban, and although details of the discussions have been kept secret, government officials, diplomats, and analysts from Afghanistan, India, China, and the U.S. said that crucial aspects of a broad strategy were taking shape. We can vouch that China will fund and the rebuilding of Afghanistan through the Taliban via Pakistan, the official said. China is Pakistan's wallet. Another diplomat in the region said China, at the request of Pakistan, will support the Taliban. So that's the headline and article from the Financial Times that I'm tweeting out that you can and everyone can read at their leisure. By the way, the Tech News Twitter account you can see on my photo. It's just TNATW. And then the other headlines related to that point is China ramping up Afghanistan involvement amid U.S. withdrawal. China appears to be preparing to ramp up its involvement in Afghanistan as U.S. troops complete their final withdrawal, with Beijing eyeing the war-torn nation for investment and influence opportunities. Beijing has been vocal, especially in recent weeks, in slamming the U.S. for pushing forward with its troop withdrawal, citing the deteriorating situation on the ground. Still, it had not made any public commitments regarding a response. And there's no quotes in that article. So the next one is China has a big plan for post-UF Afghanistan, and it's worth billions. Beijing just can't wait for the U.S. to get out of the way, is the headline. Karachi, Pakistan, to include it as ostensibly part of its Belt and Road Initiative linking Kabul and Peshawar by road means Afghanistan's formal joining of the CPEC. In other words, the Afghan government behind the scenes is welcoming China immediately after saying goodbye to America. There has been continuous engagement between Afghan government and the Chinese for the past few years, but that made the U.S. suspicious of President Ashraf Ghani government, said the sources. He added that now the engagement is growing more intense as U.S. forces are leaving, and Ghani needs an ally with resources, clout, and ability to provide military support to his government. And China watches we covered that one. Okay, so that gives people some headlines I just retweeted that they can dive into. The U.S. exiting Afghanistan, China entering Afghanistan. But what's your in 5 word in a tweet, Karam? What's your main point there?
So my main point is China is not waiting. I mean, literally,
Yeah,
you just literally
yeah.
talked about it. Just like
Mhm.
this motorway is just going to totally change the whole scenario. Kabul connecting with Peshawar, the Eastern Corridor is already complete. So, you can go from all the way from Gujarat Pass all the way to Karachi, and that's going to just literally, reduce the 3 weeks time to literally about 7 days. If China wants to get things abroad, it just literally go through. It's already right there. Now there is a western corridor which connects Peshawar to Quetta all to the Gwadar. Gwadar is operational, by the way. A month ago, Gwadar actually became this is the one of the deepest seaport, and China has been working on it for past 5 years now. And now this is operational. Premier was there a couple of days ago. Imran Khan was there at the Gwadar to actually talk to look at the logistics and how it's going to flow. Now, if you connect Peshawar with Kabul, imagine how would have an impact on the region by itself and all over Afghanistan. So it's not just simply saying, here you go, we're going to give you $100 billion or $400 billion as we given to Iran. We just simply going to go and start working on bringing your infrastructure up to the mark. So it's a very significant.
And the way these speeches work, just a little bit from my experience around how, from a business context, but I've been just learning a bit more over the years on this. The way the speeches work is that the senior leader in China makes a speech, right, in Beijing, and then it filters down. Other people have these meetings, right? They have meetings, formal, informal, a lot of them informal dinner meetings, etc. And it catalyzes a whole bunch of following Xi's speech. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a discussion. So this particular speech, while it sounds like, oh, another politician having a speech, what occurred to me is that, straight off the heels of the 100-year thing last week, straight off the whole crackdown that's starting to happen, that, China tech crackdown, in a sense, that's, or shakeout, whichever way you want to name it, that's kind of accelerating and working through the Didi thing, all that, that's the business side of it. On the politics side, there will be like all the henchmen, all the people below, like starting to have these meetings to Karam's point, actually starting to like act and work through and start the alliances. So that little point on the UK, there are meetings. I guarantee it. People picking out conservative members having little who's in party here in the UK, for example. Hey, can we get more China business in here? Can we get more China business in here? Little like kind of soft meetings, etc. Starting to. I've just been invited to something in Oxford here where there's some Chinese leader coming across. Cal, do you want to come over? We're having this meeting with this Chinese leader. Share your Best Buy experience. That soft stuff starting to happen, right? These meetings happen at the high level, and then suddenly all these meetings around the world start happening. It's a very powerful engine, right? And creating all these alliances, and obviously the US is going to do what the US does. So this is going to be lovely to watch.
Okay, so there's
And just quickly,
go ahead.
Just quickly, Tyler, one more point. Another thing to note here, Ibrahim Raisi is going to be actually taking over. That's the new president-elect of Iran. Now, $400 billion going into the Iran, what's going to be the direction of it? So if you look at the actual regime, which is going to totally change, he is ultra right, very conservative guy. He actually, clothed like Ayatollah. He just literally the person who's going to be taking over. And he perceived as going to be the predecessor of the Ayatollah as well. So you are looking at something at least a couple of decades of regime under him. Now, that is, again, a very significant development that, the new president who is coming into the power, who is going to be actually have a very friendly, maybe relationship with the, the Taliban. So the whole region is sort of like getting connected all the way to the Middle East. And China is going to be pretty much having a very deep influence over the whole region. So, yeah, that's my take on it.
Okay, so a couple other. Sorry, somebody was jumping in. Go ahead.
Messi.
No, to me, it's just the general perspective of what's happening. If we look at the scramble for Africa between the West and the East, Russia was just having a scramble with the US and the geopolitics. look at the ruin in Somalia, how it ended up being the fight between the West and the East. And then even in Ethiopia, we ended up having a socialist regime supported by the Russians. And then when they left, we had a ruined to try to rebuild. And now I can see it being on the ground, the scramble again between China and the US. So when are we going to take control of these countries, or are we going to just sit and just see this scramble happen over and over and over? So that to me is the bigger perspective that we need to take into stock of.
Okay, thank you. And then just a few other headlines to kind of fill in some of the context. A headline from the New York Times today says, for China's business elites, staying out of politics is no longer an option. The fallout from Beijing's crackdown on Didi has ensnared even those who made it a point to not mix business and politics. And then another kind of interesting headline that Poppy just found, China's WeChat, which is their biggest chat app and one of their biggest payment apps. And by the way, it does dozens of features. Actually, it's kind of like Tinder plus, selling stuff and buying stuff, all kinds of stuff. It's a mega app. It's what they call a super app. Anyway, so WeChat deletes university LGBT accounts. The Chinese tech giant Tencent's WeChat social media platform has deleted dozens of LGBT accounts run by university students, saying some had broken rules on information on the internet, sparking fear of a crackdown on gay communities online inside of WeChat. And so thank you for that, Poppy, just retweeting that to TNATW. And then China's war on Bitcoin just hit a new level with its latest crypto crackdown. China shut down a company suspected of providing software services for crypto transactions and issued a stern warning about providing other sorts of services. So there's clearly now a strong crackdown on Bitcoin, not just on the miners, but on apps generally that are supporting Bitcoin. So just tweeted that one out. Thank you to Brand Boss for sending in that one. And then there's Cal had the article with this very interesting about Didi, and we'll turn it to the real interesting headline that Ken found, that Beijing's actions against Didi and the fallout were part of a broadening crackdown by China against the homegrown tech companies. The shift began in November, starting with the IPO of the Ant Group, and at the time, people viewed Beijing's moves against Ant and Jack Ma as inevitable to rein in the power of big tech. The clampdown on Didi may have an even deeper impact as a strong signal from Beijing to discourage listings of Chinese companies in the U.S., business people and entrepreneurs said, especially as the two countries battle for tech supremacy. Right. Okay. So thank you for that tweet, Cal. Now to your, Ken, if you're still with us, this is a really interesting update on this whole Didi IPO thing that we didn't know when we met 12 hours ago. And the headline from Bloomberg that Didi handed bosses stock options worth $3 billion, actually $4 billion before the stock tanked 25%. Today it's worth $3 billion, but issuing stock options with no vesting period and no strike price essentially is quite unkosher. It's not normally how it's done. Normally there's a bit of a
strike price, but I think what you meant to say, the strike price was slightly above the issue price, so there was almost no
pay. No friction to acquiring them. Well, normally the strike price should be comparable to the market value.
Right. Or higher sometimes,
right? Depending on how.
But yeah.
But let's help people understand why this is interesting. It's quite unusual because the way I'm looking at it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is if they knew now, this is a way for the senior leadership of Didi to enrich themselves in the face of this crackdown, as if they kind of knew they were going to get punished. And this was sort of a little lifeboat strategy. So they were able to pull out a few billion dollars between them in the form of these stock options.
If they actually got rid of the stock, I read in one of the articles that's been around this, they're saying, yes, they immediately vest that, which is one issue. Vesting is one issue, but they could not apparently sell them for 6 months. I'm not sure if that's true. I've never seen anything like this on a typical American offering.
No, it's
I mean,
not. No, not conventional anyway. Yeah.
and,
What
and
I
it
read
has,
said that there was specifically what was interesting about it is that there was no vesting schedule attached to these options.
oh, you were sure? Okay, 'cause
Well,
I read. Okay,
they don't see any indication that there was.
There is none.
there is
Who,
none. Okay,
who underwrote the IPO?
Yeah, which bank
so
was involved?
well, I think wasn't it like Goldman and J.P. Morgan and it's
It's
the major ones,
those.
right?
Well, 90% of the time it's those two. Yeah, but
Yeah, I looked at that the other day. It's some of the I think it was some of the major firms, which is one of the reasons. I mean, which is I don't want to get off on a side issue, but we were discussing in one of the other rooms the other day about Robinhood becoming a securities underwriter. This is kind of one of the reasons you want some of the bigger firms to do this, not Robinhood, because if all of a sudden someone has to pay back investors, you want firms that are capable of paying back investors when something like this goes wrong. You have massive disclosure issues here because apparently they amended the registration at the last minute to do this.
ooh.
There is so many things that I just, I mean, I think when the U.S. security regulators, get into this, it's going to take them, some time. There are going to be so many issues with how all of this happened. I mean, it's just because it's almost I think without precedent from an American company, and the amount of money involved. I mean, because they're basically it's almost like just issuing equity, pure equity, was so substantial. For it is yeah. I think it's very very problematic.
Well, we were talking yesterday about how SoftBank and SoftBank and Uber were sizable shareholders, and if they are able to get out and are in the process of getting out, and the whole idea of like how did whenever this gets remade into a kind of documentary at some point, which would be a fantastic, which by the way, WeWork was made into that, right? So it's not at all inconceivable that this Didi IPO scenario will be turned into a TV drama, as these tech dramas are now being turned into TV dramas, as WeWork was. I would love to watch this Didi IPO turned into a TV drama, honestly, because I would love to see, who. Yeah, first of all, the casting would be kind of fantastic, but the play by play, the reasonable, although unknown, but someday will be known, series of events is that Didi was planning an IPO that takes months, right? That doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
And so it was known by the government that by both governments, China and the US, that Didi wants to do this New York Stock Exchange IPO. And so in ramping up for that and doing the quote unquote road show, and these road shows normally take weeks, but Didi did it in days. That was a little unusual, and that's been noted in many of the articles covering this issue. So there was clearly a rush, and I even suggested they maybe intentionally were aiming for the 100-year birthday party for the CCP to intentionally launch on that day because there would be a distraction at that time.
Thinking they'd be hungover,
on Moutuan. But when this IPO was happening, and then it's reported, there's headlines that say that the Chinese authorities said, hey, you should cancel this IPO. That's been reported. And Didi said, is that, nah, we're going to go through with it. Now, clearly, Didi and their chairman and their board members and their biggest investors would have had a conversation about, hey, we were just told to cancel the IPO. What do we think, everybody? Now, who's in that meeting? Well, Masayoshi-san from SoftBank is most certainly in that meeting as one of the biggest shareholders. Possibly somebody from Uber as well, who's American. And as Kai updated us, one of Didi's very senior executives happens to be an American who happens to have an intelligence community background and military background. And and a tech background. And then you've got Masayoshi-san's very dearest friend. It happens to be Jack Ma, where his IPO got shut down by China previously. So,
And then Jean Liu, right? I don't know if I pronounced that right. Liu, Jean Liu. She's the president of Didi, right? She's a key player here, right?
No doubt.
She convinced Uber to sell the stake. She's former managing director at Goldman Sachs, right? She's the international face of the brand, right? So she's been the international face. Very, very smart business person. Joined Didi in July 2014 from Goldman Sachs, right? In all the big, Fortune 40 under 40, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
And so she would be in that meeting, right?
Sure.
So her
and
more
she's
significant
a
background.
daughter.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
She's a
David.
daughter of Liu Chuanzhi, which is basically the founding father of the modern Chinese IT industry, the ZTE Street, and that's basically the result of Liu Qing's father. And by the way, Liu Qing, the lady, is also the person who broke the deal between Uber and Didi. So basically, between all these people, they decided to go against Communist Party of China
Right.
to IPO in US, and this is why I did tell you a few days ago, Didi's trouble is far from over.
Right.
David, you were saying something? Just 1 second, David. Oh, you're fine. Did you want to say something or not?
Oh, right. Yeah. So Kai pointed that out as well. I think the more significant position of Jane is her father's background. To be honest, someone with her education, educated at an Ivy League, working for Goldman, is, I hate to say this, but really a dime a dozen in China. Every who's sons and daughters
Got it.
went
Got
to
it.
an Ivy League school and then worked for a bulge bracket investment bank. But it's more of who her father is and how do I
Got it.
say
Yeah.
this? Yeah,
Excellent.
So
and his affiliation.
who are the big LPs? Because SoftBank was a major shareholder. Who are the LPs of SoftBank? MBS?
So not only that, but more importantly, actually, the same people, the same fund, and the same guys who backed Alibaba's IPO in the US in 2014.
So this is where it gets really interesting, because the Alibaba IPO got kiboshed, and now it looked like it was going to happen again, and they realized, oh no, here it goes again. Run, Forrest, run, get in the chopper. So they decided to hop in the chopper and jump out of Beijing, jump over to New York and do the IPO. And then in the day after that, China comes down, cracks down, stops all new registrations of users. And then the next day calls the app stores and says, pull the apps from the stores. And now it's been revealed that, but in doing that, it's possible that the investors knew that, as soon as the chopper lands in New York, that, there's the reinforcements are not far behind. And so that they need to act quickly during this IPO, and that they probably needed to liquidate ASAP, which is perhaps why it dropped 30%, nearly like a rock, and maybe because they were liquidating. And then we get the headline that the senior executives also had a sort of potential lifeboat get out liquidation situation with these billions of dollars of stock options. So it's possible.
Tyler, let me make a point on those stock options, because though there's no vesting period, this is what I was trying to say. Though there's no vesting period, according to the Bloomberg article, there is a 6-month lockup on the options, meaning so they vested, okay, so they have them, but supposedly they're not allowed to exercise and sell them for 6 months, according to the Bloomberg article. So it's a strange kind of,
Okay. So maybe they have to vest for 6 months.
No, they're vested. They're vested in the sense that they have legal ownership, vesting, okay?
Yep.
But there's like a restriction on them actually selling.
Ken, it depends when they set the start date of that vesting on the paperwork somewhere.
Oh, you're right. You're saying it was 6 months before. It's a good question. Yeah, that would be, That'd
So
even be more crazy. Yeah.
so I imagine that the intention of doing that is to allow themselves to cash out, to get their money out of the, companies are kind of crystalline structures. They're not liquid.
It's their exit, right? I mean,
Right. It's their cash out opportunity. It's their liquidation event to get their money out of the company. Investors typically, if you're trading a public company, just to spell it out for the people, we might be talking over a lot of people's heads. If you're
yeah.
trading public companies on the stock market, you can put your money in and out as fast as you want, 100 times a day if you're a day trader, right? And that's fine. It's liquid. You can go in and out multiple round trip times, 1,000 times a day, and you can buy and sell Apple every 10 minutes. That's liquid. And so, but if it's a non-public company that's private, it's not listed on a stock exchange somewhere, you're not able to go in and out at all. Your money's in, and it's in there until it gets on the exchange, and now there's a whole list of potential buyers to buy your stuff in the market. You're bringing your company to the market to sell shares on the market. And if you're not in the market, you haven't arrived you're still in the car driving to the market. There's no buyers yet until you actually arrive on the market and ring the bell and do the IPO. So the point
there, Tyler.
huh?
There's two exceptions.
Okay.
One is
well, the bankers leading up to the IPO, yeah.
There's now a market for private shares.
Yes, yes, but that also takes a bit of time.
So the other part is in a lot of these contracts, they stipulate certain events where the company gets right of first refusal at any shares, and they may not be subject to that lockout period. So if the company's got cash now on hand, it is possible, potentially, I don't know their contracts, but it is possible to sell your shares back to the company at market price, because that's how we're structuring our company. I have like 7 co-founders.
Right. But
so I'm buying back shares whenever I can.
But
so to speak.
Getting out of the textbook, for example, back into the actual case here, the question at hand is: did Didi's investors and executive team manage to cash out in the past, right at the moment around the IPO or not? And I believe there's certainly reason to believe, by looking at what's these headlines, that there was an attempt potentially to do precisely that, knowing that by going to do the IPO. So just to be perfectly clear, they were told don't IPO, and they did. And they knew if they did, there was going to be a very rapid reaction from China to kind of pull it back in some ways. So what China did is not really that big of a surprise to them, that their apps got pulled, that the new registrations got blocked, and they know that was going to have a tremendous downward effect on the stock price. So it's very likely they pre-anticipated all this, and we can suspect that because of this new revelation that they had granted themselves billions of dollars of stock options. Not so common, especially in this scenario, with the way that it was done, with the way the strike price was done, and the way that the vesting was done. So it's possible they foresaw all of this and gave themselves an out, and now they've got their money, and go ahead and sink the ship. China, go ahead and blow it to bits. We got our money out, and life goes on.
No, the Titanic is sinking. They just managed to get onto the lifeboat. They're not sure whether they will reach the shore.
But they got their money out. That's the point. Yes.
Well, Bloomberg article, I mean, I don't know how to read it. You could read the same article I did.
Right.
Bloomberg article is implying that maybe there's still a lockup and they're not out exactly. Who knows?
That's right. We don't know. So, hold that thought, because no doubt that story is not over yet. That drama will continue. It's just like watching Lord of the Rings. We will get back to what's happening with the dwarves under the mountain tomorrow. In the meantime, we can change our focus to other potentially related headlines, because it's amazing how so many of these drama lines start to interweave at different points. Here's one. Japan, in the past 24 hours, decided to make a big announcement that if China invades Taiwan, Tokyo will join America in defending Taiwan. saying it very out. Did we say this out loud? Yes, you did. You said that out loud.
Is the deputy prime minister, and I don't like him.
Yeah.
Asshole.
Yes.
He's an asshole.
Nice pun there. His last name is
asshole. His name is asshole, right?
Yes.
ASO, asshole.
Yeah. Cheryl's in Tokyo making a Japanese joke about the fact that his last name sounds like another word in English, but and by the way, this is a really interesting announcement because, and first of all, China now says, "Oh, China, of course, didn't like Japan's announcement that Japan is now willing to join America to defend Taiwan." But the reason is quite interesting because when Japan lost in the World War and America came in and wrote Japan's new constitution, part of that was they could not militarize offensively, that they could only militarize defensively, right? So, and they've been ramping up their military very notably. And America's now in favor of them ramping up their military. Like, we've got no problem with that now because we're like super strong allies. So how could Japan help America defend Taiwan if they're only able to participate militaristically in a defensive posture? And they said, well, because if China invades Taiwan, Tokyo may interpret the move as a threat to Japan's survival, specifically because of the proximity of Taiwan to Okinawa, which are geographically very, very close. So to Japan, it's an existential threat scenario. It's a threat to Japan's geopolitical interests. So they need to stop that from happening. That's their position. And amazing that they said it out loud.
This is where everything gets very, very interesting because, America forever has been a military industrial complex. How we make our money is by selling arms to protect other sovereign nations. And you have all of the saber rattling going on in the South Pacific. So we're going to be arming them. We're going to end up selling carriers to Taiwan, and it's really going to piss off China. And now we have Japan, like you said, and this is such a great room because you pay so much attention, Tyler, right? This is a 80-year-old thing, the security law of the Treaty of World War II, and like how important that is in the dynamics of things, and why Japan hasn't been able to really do anything until this moment, really, right? And it's just such dramatic. Like, this is the soap opera to listen to, man. Like, what's going on in real time is more dramatic than anything I've ever really heard as you start seeing it. And again, it's this three themes: communism versus the dollar hegemon, and now the emergence of Bitcoin, right? Like, last 2 months ago, Bitcoin mining in China was popular and allowed, and now, things are dramatically changing every single day. And it's whatever aligns the interests of the currency, and the stack, like I like to call it, is all that the countries and companies out there are concerned about.
Well, by the way, yeah, but Japan's comments didn't come out of nowhere. Why would Japan feel the need to make these comments? Well, because 48 hours before, President Xi Jinping pledged a reunification of China with Taiwan at the 100-year birthday party. And, to this massive crowd, huge visible, before the whole country, literally every citizen of China and much of the world's watching this thing. And he swears.
And this all goes back to Bretton Woods, right? When Nixon went from the gold standard to the dollar, in God we trust dollar.
Did you read this United Nations? You've been watching Peter Zeihan.
No, I mean, I'm Taiwanese, so I just pay attention, right? Like, they turned, the UN completely turned their back on Taiwan because there's only like 15 million people at the time.
Now, here's what I
China
predict.
had
Chris.
700 million people who could buy take the fake money,
right?
But in the form of doing work for you,
right? Now,
and so 40 years of labor is finally caught up.
I've got a prediction. I'm now going to predict that America is going to officially recognize Taiwan, because as of right now, there's only a small handful of about 17 countries that recognize Taiwan as an independent country, and they're all very small countries essentially. And none of the big countries were willing to do it because they wanted that sweet, sweet, juicy, juicy Chinese market. But now that there's this saber rattling going on, and due to Xi's comments at the 100-year birthday party and his comments yesterday on this virtual conference with, the Iran and, Cuba and all of China's friends, and they're kind of drawing up support to form an alliance, I predict some big country, not necessarily the US, but a big country is going to jump out, and probably Japan, honestly, is going to jump up and be
or even just to be dicks, Australia. Because
by the way,
China's pissed off everybody lately.
Great point, because for those who don't know, Australia simply said, hey, we should investigate what's going on with this WHO and COVID, the origins of COVID. We don't really believe what's coming out of the WHO. We feel like, and this whole lab leak theory, Australia was the first government. I mean, your crazy uncle, of course, was telling you that about the lab leak theory, and he was, being told, shh, keep it quiet, uncle. And now, there's a bit more possible potential evidence to explore there. And so that narrative is now within the Overton window again. But when Australia straight up said, no, hey, everybody, let's wake up. We should really investigate this thing, and we shouldn't take this this report at face value. We really need to understand what's going on. China, just for Australia as a country saying that, has banned the export of Australian wine, which is one of Australia's main exports. So, which had real consequences, which, by the way, really benefited New Zealand's wineries. So,
by the way, Tyler, that's going to be seen as act of war by China, by the way, if your prediction comes true.
Claiming that Taiwan is an independent country.
Correct. If U.S. Actually recognizes Taiwan, that's going to be just mayhem.
I don't think the U.S. will be first.
I agree. I think that declaration is not only going to be almost like a declaration of war, but it's going to bring disaster to many, many people, including Taiwanese people, I'm afraid.
Well, I stand by my prediction. Somebody some country. I'm curious. We could pontificate and prognosticate who might be the first country to say, you know what, Xi, you know what I think of your speech? We recognize Taiwan. By the way, there's 16 other countries that already do. That didn't lead to war. I'm calling your bluff. I recognize Taiwan as a country.
Italy, just using the South China Morning Post just now, it's crossing the headlines. The Deputy Prime Minister of Japan, who made those comments about he's now backtracking, saying that this could be resolved by diplomacy. But he's backtracking on his comments.
No, it's a separate politician.
Is it?
Yeah, there's two different politicians in Japan. Okay. One made the comment that we stand, but let's get the quotes because they're quite juicy quotes. And then they interviewed Japan's Deputy Prime Minister Taro Aso said that the country needed to defend Taiwan with the U.S. if the island was invaded. You might be right. He might have toned down on further questioning today. But there was another politician when asked, and the other politician, we have to find out who it is.
And Tyler,
yes.
There's also a use of English words in the translation to English media, because an article will say may, the next one will say would, the next one will say will, and the next one will say must. Yeah. So it really depends on which article you're reading.
And Cheryl and I know as Japanese speakers that it's not, the translation from Japanese into English is not direct. Those two languages require an art to translate. It's not like Germanic languages or Latin languages where you can have a more or less direct translation. Japanese phrasings aren't so directly translatable. So there's a little room for interpretation, which journalists can use to their advantage to kind of push, make the headline make the quotes a little bit stronger than maybe they were intended. So yeah, definitely keep that in mind.
Tyler, can I chime in here?
Sure.
I live in Taiwan, so I can provide some
Please do.
insight into what's going on.
Before you do, Jeff, can you address that during the 100-year anniversary birthday party or the days just prior? So in the last week, there's been now an unprecedented new level of Chinese militarized aircraft in Taiwan airspace, correct?
I believe so. We don't actually get all the news from that, and sometimes the government doesn't tell us because people will panic. But when we do find out about it, we just kind of roll our eyes and go, okay, what's new?
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
No, so as some people might know, the U.S. actually opened a new embassy here. Well, it's not really an embassy, but I think they're trying to create the embassy. So I think this happened like 2 or 3 years ago. And I think part of the reason they were going to do that is because they might have been considering at that time that they were actually going to recognize Taiwan as a country at that time. But it's all speculation because the U.S. government owned the land for like 100 years and they leased it to some driver license practice place or whatever. And there was a lot of controversy about that when it flipped over. But they built a new embassy there and it's huge. I haven't been out there yet, but it's like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 times as big as the one in Taipei City. And so I think they were kind of planning for this kind of thing. I know that there are Marines there now, which has never happened before. There's at least 2 or 3 Marines to provide security there, which, I think China might have said something about that during that time also, but nothing's happened. So some of the things that people need to understand is whatever comes out of the CCP's mouth is total and utter bullshit. It's all propaganda. It's all for their people locally to kind of support the Chinese government, right? That they cannot show weakness for any difference in opinion. So they're trying to get the patriotism from the people to say, oh, we're going to attack Taiwan and all this bullshit. And we all know here that it's a potential threat, but a lot of the propaganda around it is actually hurting China more than it is to help. And I was in Jeff's room, Jeff Browning, I think, a few days ago, and we were talking about this, and one of the points that I had made was that the U.S. government actually is making things worse because they're sending warships here and all this stuff, and China sees that as a provocation.
Right.
Right. I mean, this is bad actually for Taiwan and those kind of things, and all this rhetoric with Japan and stuff like that is not really helping the situation at all. It's actually creating more animosity and more problems for the island. And it's something that Western people just seem that they don't understand how Chinese people think at all. Yeah, so that's kind of my comment right now. So if anybody has questions or anything, I'm free to answer those.
So Tyler,
go ahead.
You're very well traveled, and I know a lot of other people in this room are. Are there other places on the planet that are like Taiwan, meaning American standard? You could take anything from America and plug it in Taiwan, and it works just fine.
You mean power of 120, 120?
Yeah,
volts?
I mean, because as I traveled Asia, you see in Hong Kong you have British influence, in Macau you have Portuguese. Taiwan was 100% American standard.
Chris,
Japan.
Chris, it's because of Japan. Chris,
it's because of Japan.
Yeah, not
but the plugs are different in Japan, right?
Yeah, it's the same.
Same plugs.
Yes.
Same.
Oh, okay. So that's just the American imperialism in play. Sorry, Mike. I've never been to Japan. I thought they had different plugs. My bad.
Well, yeah, please visit.
Well, here's another thing that's really interesting. Is that there are some Americans and other people in Taiwan that actually, there's been a lot of research about this, that after World War II, when the Japanese surrendered and they had to leave Taiwan, that actually when Japan, they kind of gave Taiwan back to China, right? But actually there was nobody in China to receive Taiwan. Right. So this creates the whole Taiwan is already independent kind of things because it's been 70 years. Right. And there is some research that shows that actually all Taiwanese should actually have an American passport. That actually Taiwan is a territory, a legal territory.
Well, so does Hong Kong. Hong Kong has its own passports.
Yeah, technically. So they kind of are part of England, right?
No, I know, but China thinks it means no.
Right, of
Well,
course. China thinks one thing, so it's yeah.
but the Hong Kongers are very fast to point out that here's my passport. It's a Hong Kong passport. And by the way, when you entered Hong Kong, does it say you entered China? No, it says you entered Hong Kong. So I mean, that's just
Right,
what the local Hong Kongers will tell you.
It's one China, 5 visa, right?
Yeah. So interesting points there. Okay, so other interesting stuff happening in terms of the big headlines going on at the moment. Biden will direct the Federal Trade Commission to draft new right to repair rules with an explicit mention of mobile phone manufacturers expected in the directive. Order may loosen rules on who can undertake phone repairs, and they specifically named farm equipment as a real priority, but they're also explicitly including mobile phones as part of it. And this is another blow to, notably, I would say, Apple and all of the smartphones, very notably, obviously directed, but also this huge issue with John Deere tractors that's been going on for a very long time. I think it scores a lot of points for Biden with the farmers around America for sure. And the headline is Biden to sign executive order granting farmers right to repair their own tractors. U.S. President Joe Biden to direct FTC to draft right to repair rules, and could loosens Apple grip on the iPhone. And absolutely, indeed, it could. Although I think Apple's one step ahead by saying, hey, that's not even your device. So even if you have the right to repair it, of course, you're going to lose your warranty if you do repair it. But I guess this would really be for people whose devices are out of warranty. Yep. Yeah. They already did this in some parts of Europe, by the way, so it's not that big a deal. But it's interesting that it's happening in the U.S. That the U.S. clearly this is a presidential executive order going against the wishes of particular big tech companies. Interesting to see.
And sorry about the electricity. I hate to be that guy, but Taiwan is actually different from Japan. It's we're on a 110/60 system here.
Yeah, that's the same as
Japan
America.
is on a 50. Japan's on a 50 or 60, depending on what part of the country you're in, etc. Like, no, this is the actual pure American standard.
The hertz.
I know this because this is the stuff I do, the power input stuff.
Interesting. So, other big headlines at the moment. Bloomberg says they have sources now that state-backed Russia hacking group APT-29 breached the Republican National Party last week, possibly via IT provider called Synex. And the Republicans say there is no indication it was hacked, although it depends who you're asking in the Republican Party. I don't. So the Russia Cozy Bear breached the GOP as ransomware attack hit hackers. Part of the Russian Cozy Bear. People familiar with matters say RNC officials say no indication that their computers were hacked. So the question is, how do we know they were hacked if the Republicans are denying that it happened? The headline from The Guardian says, who's behind? Oh, this is a separate issue. Here's Financial Times. U.S. Republican National Committee contractor has been hacked. Biden faces moment of reckoning over sprawling Russian cyber attack. And that is a good point, which is, does this fall under the 16 no-touch infrastructures points that Biden laid out in his meeting with Putin in Geneva? So as Politico correctly says in its headline that I will now retweet, Biden faces moment of reckoning over sprawling Russian cyber assault. The government's cyber defenders face a daunting challenge, pressuring Russian President Vladimir Putin to crack down on criminal hacker gangs. And Russian cyber criminals' latest massive ransomware attack is placing new pressure on President Joe Biden to follow through with his promise to make Moscow pay for turning a blind eye to digital assaults emanating from within its borders. Exactly. As he told him in Geneva, to his face. The cyber attack disclosed Friday on IT management software maker Kaseya, which may have affected as many as 1,500 companies whose vendors are using Kaseya products, prompted emergency meetings over the weekend between the FBI and DHS Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and other agencies as officials scramble to assess the scale of the damage. Victims include a tech vendor that provides services to the RNC, although the RNC said Tuesday that none of its own data had been accessed. Okay, now we understand. But while the government's cyber defenders help affected companies recover their computer systems, senior Biden administration officials face a more daunting challenge, pressuring Putin to crack down on criminals such as the Revil ransomware gang that took credit for infecting Kaseya's with ransomware. After 2 ransomware attacks snarled the U.S. gasoline and meat supplies in May, Biden vowed to take action potentially through the U.S.'s significant cyber capabilities if Russia continued to shelter ransomware gangs and violating international norms. And Putin didn't take Biden's threat this new Kaseya hack suggests that Putin didn't take Biden's threats seriously. As details continue to emerge about the range of companies hacked through Kaseya's operation, Biden and his appointees declined to say whether the attack had crossed any sort of red line, remained vague about the administration's next steps. Here's the quote. It appears to have caused minimal damage to the U.S. businesses, but we're still gathering information to the full extent of the attack, Biden told reporters Tuesday, while promising to have more to say about this in the next several days. I feel good about our ability to be able to respond, he said. Some serious flex there. Understated flex. We're going to bomb the shit out of them. Let me just translate that for you. If you didn't grow up in Washington, D.C. in the political sphere, I feel good about our ability to respond means we're going to hack the shit out of those dudes if we decide to. And they're going to wish they never screwed with us. That's how I'm just, again, cultural translation from Washington, D.C. into street talk for you.
Tyler,
yes.
CNN also covered this story, and there are more details in terms of the actual technical aspect of it, with what went on this. So it's our evil is the group, and it's pretty much not just the Russian, but also Eastern European sort of thing. And, the funniest thing is they are sort of, just creating the software and handing out to those people who are actually just creating a mayhem in terms of the ransomware attack. So it's not the actual group itself who is actually doing it, but they are outsourcing it to other groups. Here you go, you take our software and do it.
Right. Oh, you mean they don't want to be? Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're not dumb enough to get caught doing it, right? It's like, people don't typically commit crimes if they don't if they can delegate it to someone else to do it. To create a proxy and plausible deniability, which, given the weight of the retaliation, they are smart to do, because if the U.S. feels provoked, that itself could also lead to incredibly hot conflict. So, interesting headline indeed, and that's a drama in development that we will keep a very close eye on indeed. And Amazon open sources its Lumberyard game engine. That's boring. China issues sweeping warning to biggest companies, vows to tighten oversight of data security, updates its rules. And that really, that is the whole Didi IPO listing. It looks like there will be no more Chinese tech company IPOs in the U.S. What else is going on? Microsoft releases an emergency update to patch vulnerabilities impacting Windows, as all of this hacking thing is getting out of hand. EU's new law will let tech companies scan their platforms for child sex abuse material for the next 3 years without fear of violating the EU's privacy laws. And Kaseya's CEO says between 800 and 1,500 businesses have been affected globally by the ransomware attack. TikTok appears to be testing a Cameo-like feature called Shoutouts that lets users buy custom videos from creators in select regions, not including the US. This is interesting. And it's a Cameo, for those who don't know, it's an app that allows you to pay a celebrity on the Cameo app for a shout out. So you could have, I don't know, The Rock sing happy birthday to a friend of yours. And it's quite an interesting, fun little thing that people are doing, where they're paying celebrities on Cameo to give, birthday wishes and shout outs and uplifting little video clips that people send to their friends. And so now TikTok is getting in on that game, and it's testing letting users pay for a video from influencers, potential celebrities on TikTok. Shoutouts will let you pay for a custom video from creators, but is only currently available in select regions. And TikTok appears to be testing a Cameo competitor that allows people to request and pay for custom videos from their favorite creators called shoutouts. Users request, and right now it appears creators are only able to set their own rate, which is great. So it's a new way for influencers and kind of celebrity creators to monetize their appearance in TikTok. It's a great way to get celebrities into an app, by the way. The feature is only available in select markets so far. Creators in Turkey and at least one in Dubai appear to have access. The app is also presents users in some regions from even requesting a video. When you click request, the screen pops up and it's Cameo basically. So
Tyler, this is Shaheen. I want to make a comment on this.
Go ahead.
I'm observing some of this in the NFT world, and maybe others can chime in. But in my view, there's a big confusion among people who buy these things exactly what it is that they buy.
Okay.
Do they think they own that video now? Or do they think they have the right to use that video for the next 10 days? If they own it, what happens if they resell it? All of that, I think, is very blurry. And most of the sites do not clarify exactly what it is you're buying.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, if you try to sell it as an NFT, what happens?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or if you want to exhibit it and charge people, 5 cents to watch it, who gets...
Or if you post, even if you post it on YouTube, would they potentially remove it? Then you could find out how TikTok feels about it or how the celebrity feels about it. Yeah, go ahead, Cheryl.
Hey, on this note, right, since remember David is still here, I'm not sure whether he can comment about this NFT being able to, access over Alipay in China.
Say again?
You can buy NFT over Alipay in China, right? There was a news article on this a few days ago.
Oh, that Alipay was going to start selling NFTs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
David, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I mean, we already launched 2 NFT auctions, right? One with the largest auction house, which is Poly in China. So the NFT payment is done in fiat, so Chinese fiat only. Obviously, because the Chinese government doesn't recognize cryptocurrency as a legitimate currency for transactions. So I guess we haven't actually experienced using Alipay for a transaction, but that's the natural progression, right? Especially because Ant Group are the key players behind issuing the Chinese CBDC and building out the blockchain for it along with PBOC. So we anticipate that as sort of the next step. But that's really, I think, in essence, a better way for the government to regulate transactions in the DeFi market.
So here's an interesting headline that most people will completely skip over. Facebook partners to extend Africa Fiber Network. Facebook and Africa's largest fiber company are extending their reach on the continent by laying 2,000 kilometers of fiber in the Congo, the DRC. The move will make Facebook one of the biggest investors in fiber networks in Africa, or in the region, it says. The cable will eventually extend the reach, a major subsea line that's also been co-developed by Facebook, the two companies said in a statement Monday. We know that deploying fiber in this region is not easy, but it's a crucial part of extending broadband access to underconnected areas, said Facebook's director of network investments in emerging markets. Facebook has been striving to improve connectivity in Africa to take advantage of young population and the increasing availability and affordability of smartphones. The social media giant switched to predominantly fiber strategy following the failed launch of its satellite to beam signal around the continent in 2016. And indeed, it's one of these lesser known things that Facebook and Google are big players in laying the actual cables that enable the actual internet to countries. And that's where it gets tricky to kick them out if you don't like what's being said on their platforms. Twitter does not provide the internet to Nigeria. And if it did, Nigeria probably would not have shut off Twitter for reasons you can figure out by yourself. because Twitter would then turn off the internet to Nigeria, potentially. So when Facebook is providing the internet to a country, it makes it kind of difficult for that country to tell Facebook to get out of the country, right? Google as well. So, and the satellites as well. So relates all back to the point that these tech companies are not only controlling the narratives, through social media, and they have incredibly ambitious aspirations of getting into the medical industries and education industry. And if left unchecked, they will do that. And of course, they're going hog wild into e-commerce at the moment and fintech. So if left unchecked, eventually tech will take over the banks and then the medical system and the schools and the education system and your internet infrastructure. And next thing you know, the tech companies are stronger than countries. And then the country can't say, we don't like what you're doing. Then they will just laugh and say, who cares what you think? We control the country. So it's that's why perhaps, and Messi from Africa's clapping at my point, which is it's not a coincidence. We were trying to figure out, isn't it an amazing coincidence that simultaneously the US, the EU, the UK, Japan, Germany, who was next after Germany? Spain, and there's one more, Canada, all within the span of 2 weeks, all decided they need to crack down on all the big tech companies. Interesting that it all happened in, the span of 2 to 2.5 weeks, that they're all deciding simultaneously they need to crack down. I believe because they all figured out simultaneously, oh shit, we can't afford to let these folks continue to grow unabated, as they're now clearly going to kick the banks' asses. And they're saying they want to go into medtech. Oh boy. And they're laying cables. Oh shit. Everybody's kind of realizing what's going on there. And to that point, there was another article about, I'll pause. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. We'll pause until I find it because it's totally related to this point. But anyone with a burning headline they want to share while I dig through the fantastic articles here? No? Okay.
I can do a short report regarding the ransomware crap in Sweden.
Please do, Johan.
The thing is that the shops are now coming. We had a major outbreak. We had 800 grocery stores literally killed all over the country. And these are the shops that are both the big Walmart type in the cities, but they are also the post office, the pharmacies, the liquor store, the parcel services, everything in the outskirts of Sweden. And Coop, which is the name of the chain, they are really in every corner of our country, and they had all the shops killed by this ransomware attack. They have now opened about half of them, but they think it will take an additional week before all of them are back online right now. Johan, done.
Thank you. What else? And
just quickly, so over 99% deaths happening in US are the ones who are not vaccinated yet. That's another major news. So the people who are anti-vaccination, so yeah, get ready that you can be affected by it.
Okay, so Cheryl just shared an article about Russia's version of Google called Yandex, which is also leading the autonomous delivery stuff and really getting into the real-time delivery in Russia. Russia's Yandex, driverless robot to deliver food at U.S. colleges, is a headline from Reuters, and they show the robot, and as you might suspect, it looks identical to the robot out of Estonia, the delivery robot company, which Amazon notably completely copied. And now Yandex from Russia has completely copied. And you can see that in the tweet that I just sent out. But interestingly, that Yandex is testing food delivery on U.S. campuses, colleges, in some kind of partnership with Grubhub. Driverless robots will soon deliver food to students on college campuses in the U.S. after Russia tech giant Yandex and online food company Grubhub agreed to a multi-year partnership. And interesting that the robot is, again, a direct clone of the Estonian company who pioneered it. Similar to...
A side note regarding Yandex is that I shouldn't use the phrase I discourage from using it, but if you use it, only use it in an anonymous or private browsing window. The thing is that if you use the Yandex, it loads a JavaScript that actually follows you to the next sites you're going to and reports back to Yandex where you're doing and what you're doing at the other sites. Yandex is worse than Google in collecting the juicy data that you love so much.
Well, I imagine they clearly are friendly with and have a lot of support from Moscow, and perhaps they are in collaboration. And indeed, they provide the Wi-Fi when you arrive at the airport in Moscow and a lot of public places, which if Justin were here, I can assure you he would confirm. And he had the experience when he arrived there on a delegation that, if you do take advantage of the free Wi-Fi provided by Yandex, you essentially just handed your phone over to Vladimir Putin. So, and he was part of a diplomatic mission and where they had that fun experience. But so that kind of connects those two dots, that your point that Yandex essentially works as a proxy for the Kremlin. And that would explain why they've had the significant success, unabated success that they've had there. They're clearly playing very friendly with the Kremlin to have such unfettered success there. So David just sent in the headline that fintech giant, formerly known as TransferWise, which does kind of international remittances at a much reduced rate, a truly fantastic startup. They now call themselves Wise, is set to do their IPO in a rare Spotify-style direct listing and on the London Stock Exchange. So let's hope that the London investors are more receptive to this than they were with Deliveroo, as Gal will remember. U.S. gas prices highest in 7 years, up 40% from January. And my Twitter just decided to die. Okay, so going back to...
That's a headline.
Yeah.
That's a headline in itself.
Yeah. So what other Swedish supermarket chain shut as massive cyber attack spreads? Sharok, you're 2 days behind, but thank you for tweeting that in. We're well aware of that. And the Sydney Morning Herald, the Australians just learning that the Swedish supermarkets were hacked.
Did you also see the one in Miami? I just
yes, Florian. One of Miami's oldest tech firms is at the center of a global computer hack that is reverberated around the world. It's called Kaseya. This is 4 days old. Florian, we've been talking about this nonstop for 4 days.
Tyler, did we cover the flying car thing? That was a couple of days ago. The Jetsons flying car may be closer to reality. The flying car prototype from
we've shared that article 5 times over the last 2 weeks.
Sorry. It's okay.
And it's a huge amount of information you're going through. Wow.
Yeah, and Florian shared that the big tech companies might be leaving Hong Kong, as we've been discussing for the past 2 days.
Hey, Tyler,
yes.
I just want to mention something really quick because it ties in with what you said about the IPO just a couple of minutes ago.
TransferWise.
TransferWise. Well, GameStop, I've been doing some rabbit hole research, and I found GameStop's paperwork to go, they're filing for going IPO. They're doing something in the space, and they're filing, but what they wrote in a paragraph, which is very interesting, is they want to be able to have some of their shares be in NFTs.
Oh.
And it's super wild, and it's actually written differently. Of course, I'm saying NFTs, but it's written in a vernacular and in a legal language that implies that they're going to give shareholders that the shares are going to be managed as NFTs so that they could keep track of how the shares are either shorted because you know the big drama with the shares being shorted and stuff like that.
Yep.
They're going to do something unique to try to prevent that, which would be making them NFTs, which means they would have the provenance attached to the person who owns the shares, so you'd be able to know who does it if it ever happens again, which is very, very interesting.
That is super
Hey,
interesting.
which company? Can I just got a little
GameStop,
confused.
Cal. GameStop.
So GameStop's already public. So is it a new offering then?
Probably for the new portion that I mentioned a month ago or so about the GameStop going into NFTs. And they're
spinning out a new company?
Yes,
Or
yeah.
So
NFTs,
GameStop is spinning out a new company. I haven't seen that.
Check out nfts.gamestop.com and you'll see what they're doing. But I will find the documentation, Cal, because
Okay. No, that's helpful.
I believe that they are doing that, Cal, because that's why I said I don't know what it's called. But I did do some DYOR and TL:DR, which means too long to read. There is a piece of it inside the deep application to the U.S. that's asking that they allow securities being in the form of something digital, in essence. And what they're doing is they want to digitize it so that they could prevent or protect themselves from the drama of the hedgies that like to short, to play that game that Kieran and everyone sort of chats about. This actually would be a good use case to stop that, because they would be able to see who exactly did it with their stocks. So this is going to be something very interesting to watch, because they're going to be the first, I think they're the first organization to do it.
Okay. So I'm combing through the fantastic stream of headlines here. And some of the interesting ones that jump out is that Binance suspends euro deposits, and via SEPA bank transfers. Troubles at cryptocurrency exchange Binance continues, as the platform is now reportedly suspending euro deposits. It's going to be interesting to watch Binance very carefully. And what else here? Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos are in a race to not quite space, but low Earth orbit. And now Richard Branson was interviewed, and he says he would love Jeff Bezos to come see our flight, because Branson is preemptively jumping ahead by a week to get there before Jeff Bezos does. And we covered that China's WeChat is deleting university LGBT accounts. Poppy found a really interesting article that artificial intelligence used on army operation for the first time. And although Israel announced that it had used artificial intelligence in its and when the building was bombed in Gaza, and that the target selection was driven by AI, and there was Israeli publications quoting military officials saying that AI had been used a lot during that time. But now, in this case, the British Army has used AI for the first time during Exercise Spring Storm as part of Operation Cabrit in Estonia. Soldiers from the 20th Armored Infantry Brigade used AI engine, which provides information on the surrounding environment and terrain. Though the development of significant automation and smart analytics, the engine is able to rapidly cut through the masses of complex data, providing efficient information regarding the environment and terrain. It enables the Army to plan its appropriate activity and outputs. And here's the quote: "The deployment was first of its kind for the Army." Yes, your Army, not Israel. Israel's about 3 years ahead of you. It built on close collaboration between the MOD and the industry partners that developed AI specifically designed with the way the Army is trained to operate. The lessons this has provided are considerable, not just in terms of our support to deployed forces, but more broadly in how we inform defense, digital transformation agenda, and the best practices we must adopt to integrate and exploit leading-edge technologies. This AI which can be hosted in the cloud or operate in independent mode, saved significant time and effort, providing soldiers with instant planning. And this is a PR piece. But here's another interesting quote from the 20th Armored Infantry Brigade and user of the AI, Major James McAvoy, said, "This was a fantastic opportunity to use a new and innovative piece of technology and deployed environment. The kit was shown to outperform our expectations and has clear applications for improving our level of analysis and speed at which we conduct our planning. I'm greatly looking forward to further opportunities to do this in the future. The UK Armed Forces will increasingly use AI to predict adversaries' behavior, perform reconnaissance, and relay real-time intelligence from the battlefield. So AI now being used on the battlefield. But that, by the way, that is just getting started. And other folks are tweeting in that the hackers are demanding $70 million in the global ransomware hack, but that they won't get that much, which I think is safe to say. And then this one you shared, Nalormi is sharing, and Cal shared this as well, that Britain's biggest microchip factory, called the Newport Wafer Fab, is to be sold in a deal worth about $80 million, despite security concerns, because it's being sold to a Chinese-owned tech firm, which Cal's headline says is financially backed by the CCP. It's state-financed, Chinese-owned tech firm. So essentially, the CCP is buying Britain's biggest microchip factory. So that's an interesting headline. And Didi handed bosses stock options worth billions just before the IPO. That was the big headline that we covered. And thank you to others who are sending that in. And that now that Didi stock is down $831 billion. China tech firm sell-off may be far from over. China's technology giants have wiped out a combined $831 billion since their peak, and in relation to Beijing's expanding crackdown on Chinese tech companies. That's nearly $1 trillion of downward pressure on Chinese tech companies. And as we said briefly, the U.S. left Afghanistan airfield at night and didn't tell the new commander. And that's a whole big new drama that's developing. And now that America's left, they're on the brink of a civil war, with ISIS taking a lot of control of terrain in Afghanistan, as China steps in and reportedly supporting ISIS the Taliban. They are not the same. And it'll be interesting to watch how that unfolds. And what else? Bloomberg reporting on somebody named Jin, a street hawker turned TikTok influencer, once sold 6 million yuan worth of pomegranates in 20 minutes. How? He's part of China's new wave of live stream farmers who are harvesting fortunes, which I've been ranting about endlessly, but now you can see this with your own eyes. And this is a beautiful photo of a pomegranate farmer on his farm. You really have to see this photo of this farmer sitting on a crate with his iPhone that he's live streaming to, and it's being held up with just a stick stuck into the ground with some plastic. This really gives you the image of what's really happening in Asia. You really have to see this photo. I just retweeted it from Bloomberg, of a farmer on his farm in the dirt, sitting in the dirt on a box, talking to his phone, but the phone is connected to a stick that is stuck in the ground and being held together with like plastic tape. So he's taped his phone to a stick in the ground, and he's using that as a stand, as he's selling his pomegranates live from his farm to people on TikTok. And he sold 6 million yuan worth of pomegranates in 20 minutes. You really have to see this photo to really understand one of the biggest changes happening on the planet. It's a fantastic photo, and we could read the article, but it's the same point I've been making every day for 3 months, which is social commerce is going to change the goddamn world in a way that people are not in the West or I can't imagine. And as Lakeisha told us, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, about the fishermen doing the same on their boats with their catches in real time. But
Yeah, and very local, just like the man in this photo. So,
yeah.
I mean, just your local fisherman who ordinarily would sell to bigger markets is now doing it in real time on his own. I mean, I think it's really, really, I'm inspired by the fact that they have access to this technology to be able to create their own markets.
Yeah.
There's another angle, Tyler, on
Yeah.
this. Like, this e-commerce is going in some direction. Let me give you an example from Pakistan. So, for instance, overwhelming majority of that users, like there are about 130 million users on the actual smartphone and everything, and they don't have the internet because it's all prepaid. So all these telco actually came up with this idea to offer them and lure them into using the social media. So they get the free Facebook, they get the free WhatsApp, and they got the free Instagram. And they don't need the internet connection because the telcos are saying if you use these three, apps, you can actually use it. So all these ladies, like, the homemakers, basically went on live Facebook and they started selling clothing, which I actually shared that about a month ago. So they actually go on live Facebook and start actually going bit by bit, every single clothing. Okay, I have this like great shirt, I have this like great trousers and everything. This sells so much. And on the Facebook Live, they say, here's my WhatsApp number, send it to me. This is like 1,200 rupees or 2,000 rupees, and then we're going to be shipping it over to you. And this makes so much money just by doing that. And it doesn't cost anything, literally. And it's a cash on delivery. So the whole mechanism is that once you receive the order, they say, actually, you go and deliver that to this house. This is the address, and it's all local, one in one city. And they collect the cash by handing over all that clothing. So it's just amazing, amazing social e-commerce.
Where are you based, Karam, geographically?
Right now I'm based out of Chicago, but I visit Pakistan every 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah,
So,
because
but I'm very well equipped.
I'm
Yeah.
in Thailand, which is ground zero for this, where every lady around here is doing exactly that. I'm watching it myself every day, all day, every day. So I can describe for you. I have friends who are doing it. I have people closer than friends who are doing this. So I can tell you in intimate detail exactly what's going on here. And you described it perfectly. That's what's happening. And the Thailand just got its first unicorn, which is the delivery company who's facilitating the deliveries of all of these sales, because Facebook is providing the live streaming aspect. And then they're currently using Facebook Messenger or Line as the way to do the payments. And then, or bank transfers, which are now possible and in a really easy way. And then, so the only new company that could be created here was the delivery company. And that has become a unicorn as a result of all of this live shopping activity. It's phenomenal. It's truly phenomenal. You really have to see it, and that's why I sent out that tweet, so you can now get a visual of what it looks like when it's happening in real time. That photo really captures it. Such a beautifully captured photo.
Tyler?
I was going to add.
Yep.
I was going to add the same in East Africa. Particularly, I'm now in Nairobi and in Kenya. It's also taken off, and the biggest difference here is they already had M-Pesa for a long time, mobile money, and so that's just been an accelerant for it. M-Pesa came before WhatsApp and Instagram, Facebook, and so people have been doing food for farmers, but also fashion also is taking off quite a bit as well. Yeah, so selling clothes through this fashion is also very big.
Yeah.
So it's all over the emerging markets, and I think once you have the logistics, the social commerce part with the payment modes, it then turbocharges. But yeah, it's been happening. The big e-commerce companies, like, they should be worried. Like Jumia is big in Africa, but I'm assuming that the social commerce part is already ahead of Jumia, but it's not centralized in a big company. It's all distributed. So a lot of people are making money, but it's not necessarily reflected in any sort of one company platform yet, because it's all done distributed. So, of course, M-Pesa benefits, right? The telcos benefit here.
So thank you.
So Tyler,
yes?
I have a related headline that kind of weaves all of this together from the ASEAN standpoint. So Reuters reported about an hour ago that Malaysia's AirAsia is going to buy Gojek, which is an Indonesian unicorn in the transport business that's been trying to enter the Thai market. But Grab certainly has that corner. So Malaysia, or AirAsia, which is a discount airline carrier, plans to buy Gojek in Thailand. And if you remember, a couple of days ago, the Thai government announced that any investment over, I believe it's 30 million US dollars, would be tax-free if it fell within, certain categories. Well, Gojek is more or less a logistics company, but AirAsia also applied to become a digital for Malaysia's digital banking proposal that closed last week. So AirAsia, which is an airline, is really transitioning into the digital platform space via its acquisition of Gojek in Thailand, which is going to give it an 8-year tax break, but then it also might be selected as a digital currency platform within Malaysia. So I think it's just really interesting given what's happening in social commerce. And to your point, although Gojek is in transportation, apparently they're classified as a digital platform within Thailand. And so, they're kind of leaving the airline industry, which is below flat.
No, they are not. They're not. Akisha, they are actually a super app now. They are just leveraging on their database from the airline.
Yeah. So they're not selling down out of the airline industry, but they're diversifying.
They're just leveraging on the database because they have been suffering very much because of the COVID.
Yeah. So Cheryl, let me finish what I'm saying, Cheryl. So what they're doing is they're diversifying their business so that they're moving more assets out of the airline industry, which is flat at best, into digital services and electronic payments and transportation.
Yeah, a lot of people got to diversify. Yep, that's a smart move, though.
Tony, by the way, Tony Fernandez is always on Clubhouse talking about this. He has been talking about this for a long time already. They have been working on it since last year, and they have launched it in Singapore, by the way.
Yeah, so it was just announced an hour ago by Reuters that the Thai business is being acquired. Thai Gojek is being acquired by AirAsia.
Okay. There's a whole, I just found about 20 fantastic articles that I'm sorry I didn't see them earlier. But let's dive into these, and we can start with Dan's favorite topic of green tech. So if you could raise your hand here, Dan, or I'll jump through them. The first is from Dan himself. I'll save that for him. The other is British Volt Gigafactory Game Changer. This is the headline from the BBC. It's called British Volt Gigafactory Game Changer Car Battery Plant is now approved. Plans for a huge electric car battery gigafactory, which it claims will create 3,000 jobs, has been approved. The Northumberland County Council described the plant on the site of the former Blythe Power Station would be a game changer. It has granted planning permission to British Volt. They're taking the name right from Northvolt. That's funny. To build the 235-acre site. The company said the plant would be operational by 2023 and bring much needed employment to the region. It is hoped that the factory will eventually produce enough lithium-ion batteries for 300,000 electric cars per year. British Volt chairman Peter Rolton said, "This is a huge win not only for British Volt, but also for people of the region. The gigaplant will bring with it much needed employment, totally regenerating the area." And that's all lovely. But this is when I'm wishing our friend Milos was with us, because he said there's only a few people capable of doing these things. And I've heard that as well from my friend Peter at Northvolt. So I'm curious where they're going to, oh my God, they're even taking the logo from Northvolt. This is just clearly a Northvolt clone to be done in England. But if I remember correctly, it was to be used for which car company? Fiat or Nissan, or no, not Nissan. It was, I think, a French company that was going to be their main. It was also announced that Nissan's partner Envision AESC will build an electric battery plant to supply an expansion
Renault.
of Renault.
Renault.
There you go. Thank you, Cheryl. It was Renault, who's essentially going to be the big buyer of the batteries from this plant, which you kind of need if you're going to, raise the billions of dollars necessary to do one of these big projects. You got to partner with one of the companies that are going to use your batteries from this company. So it's interesting. although I'm a little bit skeptical as to when you copy a name and a logo so closely as British Volt has done with Northvolt. Yeah, we'll see. Wow. Let's hope they know how to make the batteries. The problem is there's a constraint on the number of people who know how to do these things, as Milos has himself said. So it'll be great to get his. We'll save this article and bring it up when we meet again now in 6 hours, where Milos normally joins us. And let's remember to mention British Volt, and if it'll be possible, what he thinks of the feasibility of British Volt. So Dan, you had one about human influence on rainfall.
Yeah, it's actually pretty cool. What they did is they took rainfall data from around the world, and it's very hard to kind of make heads or tail about whether that a particular set of events is due to climate change or not. So what they did is they just fed all this data in, and then they taught it because they had the forcing, the amount of climate forcing simply went up every year. So the thing they were training against was the year. So it made it kind of simple from that point of view. And then it learned, and then it was able to tell when they fed it data and they showed it, like check out this set of rainfall data, it could figure out what year it was, basically. So it was able to show that there's a definite human influence on extreme precipitation, heavy rainfall events. And it's normally very difficult to figure that out, but they did it using machine learning. I thought it was a pretty cool application of machine learning.
Yeah, but more importantly, where the future of rainfall will be happening is kind of the really key debate point, because the places that don't get rainfall are going to want to move to the places that do get rainfall. Speaking of EVs, though, somebody just sent in this fantastic new UTV. They're called an electric UTV with 22-inch of travel and 200-mile range. The Brawley looks to be the first high-performance electronic side-by-side on the market, and it's like I want to get one of these things. This is now on my Christmas list, and you have to see the video. It's a YouTube video in the article that we just tweeted out at the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW, which you can see in my photo. It's I don't want to call it a dune buggy, but it's certainly a mix of an on-road, off-road vehicle. Incredibly cool looking, I have to say. And what are some of the other details? The company did not specify if the 200-mile range is on dirt or on pavement. It has a 60 kilowatt hour battery paired with it's a very lightweight vehicle, because it's like I mentioned, it's kind of a dune buggy kind of a thing. And it's called the Brawley, has removable roof, and there's room for 4 adults. And the company did not release pricing or availability, but you can pre-order starting July 15th on the company website. But my God, this would be fantastic on your own remote island in the South Pacific or in the.
It's got good lines. It looks really good.
It does look cool, doesn't it? Yeah, that's an island hopper right there. If that thing could go on water as well, then I'm done. Other than that, or get my own vertical takeoff and landing copter. But I'm trying to find out which one will be acceptable in Thailand. So anyway, kind of keeping on the theme of the green tech, we had a headline yesterday that somebody's sharing again today, that a South Korean team claims to have figured out a new membrane using nanotechnology to produce a new production process that could desalinate water with 99.99% efficiency, which would be a tremendous breakthrough for the desalinization process. And let's keep our fingers crossed that is as promising as the headline implies. Another China article that came in, Cal found this one, that Nike shares are losing out to Chinese sneaker rivals as the Xinjiang cotton controversy fuels a wave of patriotic buying in China, which I've seen videos about on YouTube, where essentially inside of just some additional context to this headline from Bloomberg, that Cal found and I retweeted is that Nike has clones, like every company has a clone in China. And in fact, when I was in Shenzhen not long ago before COVID, there's Aesop soap, this really beautiful soap from Australia. So people know about Aesop soap. Wildly expensive, but amazing soap. Anyway, so there's an Aesop soap clone in Shenzhen, which looked. At first I thought it was an Aesop store in China, and it turned out to be just a clone. But anyway, well, there's reports of Apple stores being completely cloned, and even the employees at the store didn't know they weren't working at an Apple clone. They thought they were working at an Apple store, and it was a clone. Just to give you an idea of how much cloning happens in China. So these Nike clones are now taking over Nike's business in China because as a result of Nike making a comment about the Xinjiang cotton boycott, along with H&M. H&M is losing its business in China as well. Nike is as well, because the social media in China is now being fueled by posts that are very anti-H&M and anti-Nike. And probably anti-Didi, as Kai was alluding yesterday, that once a narrative picks up traction in the mainland on Weibo, which is the Chinese version of Twitter, you've all of a sudden, you've got a notable market shift in sentiment among buyers and consumers. And so there's actually a graph of this about the Nike in China. And the quote is, "There's definitely some bitter aftertaste among Chinese consumers since the Xinjiang cotton boycott," said Catherine Lim, a senior analyst with Bloomberg Intelligence. "The issue has helped raise the profile of homegrown brands," meaning Nike clones, like Anta and Li Ning, while Nike shares struggle in China. So it's, yes.
Tyler, the comment that Christine Liu made on the Twitter thing that came with that article as well, which is where I first saw the article.
Yeah.
As I found that interesting. I would write this myself, right? Christine's put out there, like, "It's by design," the comment to the article, right? "It's by design. The China market was never meant for foreign brands and companies to win long term once expertise was transferred to local companies. Also, it's getting hard for global brands to look the other way on things and pass it off as developing country growing pains," right? So, I mean, that is a real, global company issue now, right? I mean, and yeah.
I can recommend a book. It's called China Inc. I started reading it when I visited Taiwan, and it really talks about the Taiwanese Chinese kind of brinksmanship. They kind of try to one up each other, and Taiwanese kind of come over into Shanghai thinking they can set up a company and ultimately take the money out of the country, and China says no, you're not going to do that. And it's exactly what Christine said. Everything is by design. Like, you show some success. It's basically proving product market fit for the Chinese government and doing the work for them, and then they just take over. And that's what goes on with the Taiwanese and the Chinese, is that there's this constant belief that one is getting a better deal than the other, but ultimately China has the strings.
Krista, just to take it beyond Taiwan, I just want to, this issue is for US companies. And I'm surprised, I'm like stunned at how it hasn't changed in 10 years, right? From my work in China in exiting a US brand. There's, when Best Buy first invested in China, we were invited in by the Chinese government, big time, like big time. They would pick me up at the airport, take me to my hotel. Of course, they're watching what I'm doing as well. But, it's very, very big time. And the essence there was, and it was an explicit conversation from a MOFCOM minister, and this is not criticizing, it's just fact. And they would admit it. It's like, "We want to learn your skills." Like, it was, "Please come in, bring your money, you'll make money," like, kind of, but we want to learn your skills. And then we decided to do two things. Well, at least I decided, and the board agreed effectively, that we would de-risk it and we would buy a local Chinese company at the same time. And the local Chinese company was a company called 5-Star. We took a 75% stake in the 5-Star company, which is a Chinese brand, like pure Chinese brand, retailer, consumer electronics retailer. So we bought that brand and we were able to buy that brand. It was some really good local leaders we had and really good guanxi and really good, no corruption, all good stuff. And we were able to buy that brand and also run the Best Buy brand. So it was a beautiful vantage point to see both. And then when we decided, when we started to see some of the signs on the core Best Buy brand, yes, there were some execution, challenges. You got to understand China, but of course, remember, we're learning from the Chinese brand as well. So it wasn't all about trying to understand what Chinese. We had a wonderful Chinese leadership in the Chinese brand. So when we exited the U.S. brand, the Best Buy stores, we shut them down. It was we were the first big, retailer to make that courageous decision. Nobody's making money there, but nobody was doing it because it's a tough thing to do. Like it's career limiting for many people. It's whatever. People don't do that, right? So we decided to do that, and we shut the Best Buy brand. We took care of people, but we kept the Chinese brand. They were just so excited because they could now see, and they said explicitly, the Chinese government said, now you can bring your skills to our Chinese brand. So that we played that and kept that, and then later on, the management sold that at a huge premium to a local Chinese player. But just to reassert this point, it has, in some ways, it's way more intense now. And the challenge now is, would a new U.S., just from a U.S. perspective, would a U.S. CEO, how do they make the case to their board to invest new investment into China? Tough right now.
No, yeah, that's the interesting turning point. Is the game is up. Here, let me read through some headlines, kind of semi-relevant. And by the way, I think honestly, China is the first to figure this out. I think other countries are also going to realize, we just want our own domestic versions of all of these successful companies, like Bed Bath & Beyond. Okay, we got one. That's fine. All right, let's copy it. We have our own Russian Bed Bath & Beyond. We don't need the Americans to come in here and take all of our Russian money, and either whether we force them to keep the money here in Russia or not, or pick any country you want. You could, India, Indonesia, on and on and on. These bigger countries with bigger markets are going to want to have their own domestic success stories. And I really feel like China's just ahead of the curve in this, as much as, we will see. Yes.
I'm sorry, I apologize for the noise in the background. I'm in a cafe for the first time after COVID. But the one interesting thing about what you're describing about these brands, and I think Cal will also understand this, is that this is where also the provenance of the luxury brand comes into play, because the Chinese could replicate companies like Nike and all these other elements, but they cannot replicate the luxury brands. And with all the money that's in China, they do want the European luxury brands, like the Louis Vuitton, the Richemont, the Prada, the Gucci, and that is where that's also where counterfeit starts. Because this is, what you're describing rides the fine line of Chanel, who said copying is the highest form of flattery, right? But when it comes to luxury brands, it's not the highest form of flattery. It's actually counterfeiting. So this is where I truly believe Adine and companies like that, who have created the Louis Vuitton blockchain consortium, will be able to bring provenance to the luxury brands, so that they'll be able to keep them alive.
Yeah, thank you for that, Amay. So turning to India for a second, Ranjit just found two fantastic articles that that's a humdinger we got to save. Indian startups have raised nearly $11 billion. Oh, no, that's not the one I want to read. Where did it go? In 2020, investments in India surpassed in 6 months as VCs, private equities bet on increased digital adoption in India. Indian startups have raised $12 billion in the first half of 2021. 382 VC deals amounting to $12.1 billion in 6 months. That is unbelievable. That is fantastic. That is huge. That is a lot of VC investment in one market. It says Indian startups have raised a record, about $12 billion in the first half of 2021, up from $4 billion in the first half of 2020. So in 2 years, they've done 3x. That's fantastic.
So I guess the golden age is gone because it's actually the platinum age, right?
Yeah. And then Karam sent in an article of why is Amazon investing in autonomous trucking? Well, I think you all know the answer to that. At the end of June, Amazon made a significant bet on autonomous trucking company Plus. It bought a fleet of 1,000 autonomous trucks, as well as an option to take a 20% stake in the company. And obviously, it wants to automate this entire supply chain, the logistics chain from, and run that thing round day and night without the meddlesome unions getting involved, which are making a very strong effort at the moment. And it's about efficiency is what it. But
and then remember how the Teamsters are now really kind of taking the side of the 1099 type services, right? Because they realize they're going to lose the truckers pretty soon. There's not going to be truckers anymore, right? And they need to find new members for their union. So they're really looking hard at the transportation industry in general.
Yeah. So the headline from the BBC right now is Iran produces enriched uranium. And so that the idea of getting the European officials warned the move could jeopardize talks to revive the abandoned 2015 nuclear deal that Trump pulled out of. And indeed, now that that's a problem. Because, the whole point was, you're not going to enrich uranium. And now it's BBC reporting, European officials warn our nuclear talks in jeopardy as Iran produces enriched uranium. And Israel just shit itself very thoroughly. And because they've been trying to stop that from day one. And wow, that could get very interesting very quickly. That changes the power dynamic in the region tremendously. If Iran becomes a nuclear state, because they've vowed to wipe Israel off the map, as Israel is very keen to remind everybody. So let's hope for the best. Somebody sent in the article about the Norwegian photo editing influencers, and thank you for sending that in again. We've covered that rather extensively. Apparently, Norwegian influencers are very much in favor of flagging photos to let people know that people are editing their face in through these apps. Yet those same influencers have no problem with editing their face at the doctor's office. Qualcomm wants to get into 5G into your laptops. And I love that idea. It's a little chip. They're already doing it in your iPads. They're putting SIM cards into your iPads. Why not put a SIM card into your laptop or a 5G chip to enable 5G on your laptop? I kind of like it. And speaking of the Middle East, Sheikh Mohammed launches new platforms to support startups and investors in the UAE. We will no doubt bring this up again when Faraz is with us in the other time zone, so we can jump into that. And I suspect I will be getting a phone call soon from the UAE to come back to Dubai now that they're ready to really boost up startups in the region. And Heyman sent in an article that there is now a deal with the UAE and Israel together. The pipeline that brings Israel and UAE together, the pipe stretching 254 kilometers from the Israeli resort town of Eilat to the Mediterranean port of Ashkelon, the Trans-Israel pipeline that some suspect is why the UAE is kind of separating itself a bit from Saudi Arabia, which was a headline we read yesterday, that there's now OPEC is having some disagreements internally, namely between the UAE and Saudi Arabia. And maybe we know why, because now the UAE might be just selling directly separate from OPEC now that they got their own customers to buy directly. Interesting thought. And then this is a wild headline that the whole genome sequencing of humans, of all UK newborns, would have public support, according to The Guardian. The headline is whole genome sequencing of all UK newborns. So any new baby born in the UK would have its entire genome sequenced, would have quote unquote public support, according to somebody in the UK who, I wonder who it is. I wonder if they financially benefit by genome sequencing. How much would you like to bet that whoever's making that statement is in the business of sequencing genomes? Consultation shows positivity toward screening program to spot those at heightened risk of certain health conditions. Plans to sequence the whole genome of every newborn in the UK in order to spot those at heightened risk of certain health conditions would have, with consultation suggesting would have public support. Consultation suggesting the approach could have public support. The potential for genomics to improve health was at the heart of the Chief Medical Officer Annual Report of 2016. The new approach was backed by UK's former Health Secretary Matt Hancock. The now Genomics England says discussions with the public have offered support for the plans. Our consultation, meaning Genomics England, shows that really carefully done whole genome sequencing of newborns would have public support, Professor Sir Mark Cloughfield, chief scientist at Genomics England, told The Guardian. Well, yes, as I said, who's making the quote? And in this case, the quote is coming from the chief scientist at Genomics England, is saying that genomic sequencing would have public support. Well, of course you think that. That's your
through a
business.
consultation, through a little consultation that was designed by Genomics England, probably.
Yeah.
I'll look into that. Yeah. But very interesting.
Yeah. So now you've got, I would bet the opposite. I bet, yeah. Well, the question is...
all evidence, Tyler, based on what we've reported here, right, on how astute the activist movement in the UK is against data and data privacy. Remember the little movement from some really, active people around Palantir, right, and spotting that and campaigning against that Palantir and NHS relationship. So I don't think this is going to go under the radar, and it's going to have a lot of scrutiny from the public, and people are going to care.
For sure.
Yeah. So no, your instincts are absolutely there.
But also, it says would have public support. The question is how much public support, because you're going to need more than 50%. Yes, I think you could have 20% public support, but I don't know that will mean much. The question is how much public support. So somebody needs to do what's called a poll, and you test people. And you guys are scientists, you genetic engineer people understand this concept called science and data. Maybe try some of that. Maybe go out and do a little polling. No doubt this idea occurred to you, and if no doubt you did it. And no doubt you know what the results of those polls already are, but you're not revealing it because they're not in your favor. And that's how we know that this is a bunch of bullshit. But nice try. So Poppy sent in this headline that transforming the insurance industry with big data, machine learning, and AI via Forbes. And indeed, big tech wants to get into big insurance. So the transforming the insurance industry with big data and machine learning is the headline from Forbes. And it says, the business of ensuring protection from financial loss and mitigating risk is as old as human civilization. The Code of Hammurabi, king of Babylon, written in 1750 BC, specified the first provisions of what we would know as the marine insurance. And this is a rather verbose article, but long story short, people are starting to realize, here's the quote, we don't believe that AI and machine learning will lead to a dystopian future. We are focused on incrementally using machine learning and AI to solve some very basic problems. And he concludes, insurance agents will absolutely be part of the future. They develop the client relationship and serve as a place of trust. We believe that the role of the agent will be augmented by new tools and processes. New roles may be created. The future of insurance will be a hybrid model in the short term, where consumers can choose a digital or traditional experience and gracefully move between these options with ease and confidence and efficiency. And according to Paul Ford, who clearly is trying to sell people on the idea that we should embrace the machines and not be afraid of them. And Paul, you should just be honest with everybody. The machines are going to take over the insurance game, and the humans are just going to get in the way, honestly. So just do yourself a favor and just be honest with people. And
Tyler, just one thing on the insurance. It's funny. San Jose actually passed some sort of local some laws or regulations or whatnot that whoever actually owns a gun would have to actually get the insurance for it. So I don't know what that insurance means is that whatever the
check this
infliction
out.
You get.
Here's something people don't think about. The big insurance company in China called Ping An, which if you've ever been to Shenzhen, you know Ping An because it's by far the tallest building in all of Shenzhen, Ping An Tower. It's absolutely mind-blowingly massive on the skyline. And Ping An is the big insurance company, one of the biggest companies in China, and it's the insurance company. And I met with Ping An's CEO who spoke at my event in Hong Kong. And he told me something fantastic on stage. It blew my mind. I mentioned here, I think, once before, which is he said they use AIs. I said, well, how do you use AIs in insurance? He says, well, it's very simple. When people apply for insurance, we have them do a video, they use facial recognition, as everybody in China uses facial recognition for all kinds of things, for paying for things, for etc. So it's not at all surprising they're using facial recognition algorithms. But in this case, they use them to do lie detection, and they intentionally ask questions of the person who's applying for insurance, questions that they know they will have to lie about. They actually intentionally create the scenario of the sequence of questions that would force them to be dishonest, and so that they can capture what their face does when they're lying. So that when the person comes back to file an insurance claim, they're also going to force you to do it via video with facial recognition and do real-time lie detection analysis as part of your claim based on your face. And they say that that's their secret sauce. Whether or not it is, it certainly has a potential placebo effect that they're telling everybody very publicly that we do this, which we have to imagine reduces the propensity of people trying to abuse their insurance policies and do insurance fraud in China.
Which we must remind you that fraud is a crime punishable by fill in the blank. You know,
but it's a really fantastic idea. Vietnam.
It's worth noting, Tyler, just quickly, that this is an iteration on existing sort of lie detection and whatnot. It's been incorporated into phone systems for insurance for many, many years now that will monitor your stress levels and whatnot when you're calling up to make a claim, and then can compare it to previous calls, and then will give a probability on how much you're telling the truth and how much you're lying. So this has been in the phone systems for a while, so this is just the next step from that.
Yeah, well, also, once you add in the heart rate monitor and the camera gets better and does your iris detection stuff and yada, 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 it's going to get, I mean, the insurance tech thing is going to get far more accurate, and the lie detection is going to get far, far, far more accurate. And tech is going to take over insurance for precisely these reasons.
Well, you won't even make a call anymore, will you? There won't be a moment where you have to make the call in. It will just be automatic because your car will be hooked up and there'll be footage immediately, and there'll be the telemetry from your vehicle and telemetry from the
that's in the car insurance case. I'm talking about all the other forms of insurance, yeah.
Ah, right.
Yeah. I was going to add, Carl and Tyler, I have two investments in the insurance space in Africa, and we're already seeing this in the ag sector already, where in the old model you'd have claims agents going around checking whether it rained or not, but now using drones, you can and satellite data, you can understand whether with sensors before even having to send out a claims agent. It is challenging to sell. Obviously, ag insurance to smallholder farmers is a massive opportunity in emerging markets, India, Africa, etc. And yes, like with the use of drones and satellite data, you can start to offer new kinds of insurance that completely disintermediates having to need a claims agent. And don't forget, in these markets, you often have corrupt agents and prior, which has ruined the insurance market because people don't trust insurance. They're like, oh yeah, my dad used to be a farmer and he had a dodgy insurance agent. who screen them over on claims. But now with technology, particularly when it comes to ag with weather monitoring, you can offer it and at least eliminate that and have machines do that checking. There's a number of startups that are attacking this space. It's not easy because there's a number of other issues that come up, right? But yes, as Carl was saying, you can, and you saw Tyler, that you can actually remove this whole idea of claims process, and it depends what sector. But in the ag insurance space, you're already seeing this starting to happen where there's more automation already in the ag sector, which is helping the insurance side of things.
Cool.
So can we call it a given that that Amazon at some point is obviously going to go into insurance? They've been talking about it for a long time. They're already getting into health, but home insurance specifically. Can we call it a given that if they open up that option there as a product, that you will get subsidies if you install the Ring cameras, and then those cameras, along with the neighborhood system in the US especially, that they are going to be used to sort of judge the truthfulness and the efficacy of your claim, if you see what I mean. Like they will have footage on the ground from your cameras and from surrounding cameras of what happened, specifically home insurance, or if something was like your car was stolen off of your drive, that kind of thing. Right?
Personal injuries at home, etc. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
if you use the indoor ones.
So let me tell you about the farm state here.
Like here in the US, pretty much like two of the things, what you said about the cameras, all the sensors, all the thermostats and everything. If that is given to them, that information is given to them, like I'm getting about 30% discount on the car. I've received about 6 months ago, I've received a dongle that if I actually put the dongle in my car, I'm going to get 30% discount. So they're just monitoring everything, and then you get the discounts on it. So that's the range into it.
Cal,
that's also the way to get around data privacy issues, by just buying it from you.
Cal, what did you do that Metro Mile SPAC?
Yeah, well, I invested in it. Yeah,
because there's insurance companies precisely today that are one in Sweden that's become quite popular, one in the US that's becoming quite popular, and it's now publicly tradable. And I think the ticker is just Mile, isn't it? MILE.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yep. And
just do Metro Mile. Just search it. Yeah. It's Chamaza did a pipe investment in there.
Yes, but it's David. Recall, well, more importantly, it's David Freeberg's company. He's the founder.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And where it's currently trading at 872. Looking at the chart, it's not performed well since it came out in January, at the beginning of the year, January 4th. It came out at 14. It went down to 7, and it's currently at like 9. But it's starting to uptick now. But
hang in there.
Yep,
hang in there.
I agree.
These are all long term.
I agree.
Because you know what happened? No, I mean it's on. So they just. I don't give investment advice, but what I would say is that to what the money that I invest, just the public company money, it's all long term thesis, right? Based on these theses. So shopping and absolutely on the automation of insurance and the data flows around that, and just the per mile just makes total sense, right? Because when you're renting cars, or when you're thinking about young people, there are some young people that don't drive their car that much, right? They drive it, but they're huge insurance on the basis of averages that we have today. So the whole system on assessing risk is very archaic, very old, and Metromile is one of those that's reinventing that. This, by the way, Pierre's company is doing that too, I think, right?
They're in a similar
Pierre's
insurance
core
tech space.
Yeah.
Disintermediation is dead.
Is this where you have the tracking in the car, whatnot?
Yes.
It adjusts the... Yeah, that's been... Places like Direct Line and Hastings and that kind of thing. It's called black box over here is the term we use for it, where you get the telemetry fitted to your battery, actually, in your car, and quite often wired into your car's CPU to stop you from sort of like removing it. But they've been over here for several years now. They're really popular with bringing down the prices for young drivers because obviously, 18 to 21 is the highest risk. So if you keep to under certain speeds, if you don't accelerate too hard, this kind of thing, if you don't drive too much, and it all lowers down your insurance. But that's been over here for quite a while now in the UK.
Carl,
I wanted to add one more thing.
But Carl, that doesn't do per mile, right? So what that does is it takes an overall average. It's still an archaic model. It's the same models, but what they do is they put a cap on the insurance. So you bring your insurance down. I recently just paid a check for a 19-year-old on the basis of putting some of these black boxes in the car. What it does is it takes it down from, let's say, 2,000 to 1,000 pounds, right? Maybe max 1,200 if you do that. But per mile means if you drive your car, you don't use it because you're at university, right? So you got like literally, I'll use it per mile, right? And that gives a whole different game. But the underlying data collection, etc., is the existing companies can't do that yet.
Okay.
I was going to add one more thing, Tyler, if you don't mind. We have to also be careful that we don't assume, just like in the fintech space, that big tech will eat this all up. I know it's popular to think that, we talk about Amazon, but let's not forget insurtech is regulated. It's not like industry where you're not going to have these issues that we already have now with other, I know Tyler, you mentioned health a lot. Banking is obviously regulated. In many emerging markets, they're not going to let big tech just walk in and come in and handle it all, because of the fact that they don't want them to dominate, and it's regulated. They want to protect their local insurance industry. For example, I've seen like AXA, which is obviously a French European insurance company. They have huge shares in Africa because of colonial links they've had for ages, right? Ensuring, and so they're incumbent. And for example, I recently bought an e-mountain bike and also have a drone. I tried to get them both insured in Tanzania. You have to work with local insurance companies, right? You can't just say get some fancy insurance vendor from overseas and say, well, first of all, will they insure you in Tanzania? And also, will the government recognize that? So drones were recently, kind of fully regulated in Tanzania, and you have to get insurance for the drone, and they only let you pick certain insurance providers in country. But this is not only in Africa. When I get my Schengen visa for Europe, I can only work with certain insurance companies for travel insurance in Europe. No surprise there, right? Yeah. So let's not assume that people will look over this. Like, I think selling tools to these insurance agents and firms on the ground is probably a smart play. But let's not assume that Google, Amazon will just come in and sweep through, because they've seen the story before happen in other areas. They're not going to let it happen with insurance so easily.
I'm with you on that. People are starting to wise up about, rather than try and fight tech head on, it's better to go to the government and regulate them off the map. So the other interesting headlines at the moment, a brown trout becomes addicted to methamphetamine levels in water, as aquatic environments fed by streams of discharged wastewater are inherently prone to pollutants from human activity, and that can include conspicuous consumption of drugs, legal or otherwise. A field of research is forming around this phenomena in an effort to uncover what it could mean for marine organisms, and a new study that has shed some rather grim light on the matter, demonstrating a capacity for brown trout to become addicted to methamphetamines. Here's the quote. The elicitation of drug addiction in wild fish could represent another example of unexpected pressure on species living in urban environments. You got a goddamn fish addicted to crack. Now,
we've hit a new low as a species.
That's unbelievable. Vietnam orders Netflix now. Vietnam has a new demand for Netflix to remove a particular Australian spy show called Pine Gap over the map that they're using in the show about the South China Sea. So the map, briefly shown in 2 episodes, prompted a complaint from Vietnam's broadcasting authority. Netflix has pulled an Australian spy show while Netflix is complying, apparently, by removing Pine Gap. This Australian spy show from its services in Vietnam over scenes containing a map of the South China Sea showing Beijing's claims in the Flashpoint waterway. The map, shown briefly in 2 episodes of Pine Gap, has prompted complaint. China has long used its so-called 9-dash line to justify its claims over most of the resource-rich South China Sea, often to the displeasement of Vietnam, which also claims parts of the waterway. Vietnam's Authority of Broadcasting and Electronic Information said on its website that the images shown during the 6-episode drama had violated the country's sovereignty over sea and lands. Netflix violations have hurt feelings and caused outrage amongst the entire Vietnamese people of 100 million people. Well done, Netflix. You fucking pissed off the Vietnamese. The statement also said that this was the 3rd time over the past 12 months that Netflix had been found to distribute movies and TV shows containing content which violates Vietnam sovereignty. It singled out a Chinese rom-com called Put Your Head on My Shoulder and the political drama Madam Secretary. Netflix confirmed that Pine Gap, which is described as an international political thriller set around the Australian and American Joint Defence Intelligence Facility at Pine Gap in Australia's Northern Territory, had been removed from Vietnam. The quote says, following a written legal demand from the Vietnamese regulator, we have removed the licensed series Pine Gap from Netflix in Vietnam to comply with the local law. It remains available in the services in the rest of the world. China claims the majority of the South China Sea, blah, 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 blah. Now, here's another point. In 2018, romantic comedy Crazy Rich Asians, one of the scenes cut from screening in Vietnam featured a designer bag with a map of the world showing disputed South China Sea islands under Beijing's control. I did not know that. They had to cut out a scene of Crazy Rich Asians, which showed a map on a designer bag. I did not know that. So, what's interesting about this is that China is a major investor in Hollywood, where a lot of this content is now being produced. And Hollywood knows very, very well this political dance with China, where you cannot show anything in any film in Hollywood that doesn't please Beijing, because then your film will not be addressable to the Chinese market, where these Chinese investors are based. And so China can now edit basically any Hollywood film as it wishes and remove anything it finds potentially offensive. And so also any maps that appear in any films are obviously going to be to the appeasement of Beijing and not Vietnam. And now you're seeing why Vietnam is now reciprocating by saying, there's a map of Asia. It's obviously going to favor Beijing because that's who's financing all of this content, and we don't like it, and get your film out of Vietnam. And by the way, this is going to happen very soon in the Philippines and all around. But it shows how money influences these things, because China's the investor in a lot of these productions in Hollywood. So it's interesting to see how there's now kind of a bit of a blowback on the medical side, helping you transform healthcare training. Somebody sent in, I believe it was Poppy, this article. It's not even an article. It's a website of a product called OxfordMedicalSimulation.com, which is a VR platform for healthcare. And it's a startup with a website, and they have their own video that you can watch about how they are selling VR to doctors and helping them transform healthcare training using virtual reality simulation for optimal patient care. Oxford Medical Simulation delivers award-winning virtual reality medical and nursing simulation that helps educators save time and money in delivering quality, flexible, measurable training that improves patient care. Fantastic. We're teaching doctors through VR. That's fantastic. And lastly, also on the VR front, I mentioned that horror movies are going to be make a huge comeback when VR starts happening, because horror in VR is like a whole other level that you just cannot imagine until you actually experience it. And Blair Witch Oculus Rift Edition will be released tonight. So one of the biggest horror film titles of the past decade or so, now coming out on Oculus. And indeed, the horror genre is going to have a massive resurgence due to VR. That's my prediction, because I've done it with my friend Tommy Palm, who joined us here in Tech News Around the World with Resolution Games. One of his first titles, I think his very first title, was a horror title that I experienced in his office, and I'm still shaking from that experience. So I'm warning you, do not try this Blair Witch VR headset thing unless you have a very good heart condition, because it will scare the absolute bejesus out of you.
There's also a lot of mucus in that film, if I remember right.
And a lot of weird movements, right? The camera was moving around like in a weird way, so like I can't imagine.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if they have to put some of these games that have to put like a white dot in the middle to sort of help with that motion sickness. I don't think this would have it before it's a movie, but maybe it's needed.
Yeah. Anywho, so we just went over 4 minutes. I actually have a call, and sorry, Ben, you had a headline about a supercomputer in China. China claiming that they now have the world's leading quantum computer or something of that sort. Here it is. Chinese scientists say they now have the world's most powerful quantum computer. This quantum computer solved a problem in just 70 minutes. The most powerful supercomputer would have needed at least 8 years. And so I'm retweeting this out to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW, which you can see on my face if you look at my photo. If you need help spelling TNATW, it's very simply spelled TNATW, which is short for Tech News Around the World. And the article says a team of researchers in China have claimed a new record in quantum computing, saying its computer is far more powerful than any that came before it, including the best effort by Google. In a preprint uploaded to ARXIV, the researchers claim their quantum computer was able to solve a problem using 56 out of 66 qubits, the quantum equivalent of bits in a conventional computer. That's a step up from Google's Sycamore processor, which only has 54 qubits. In 2019, Google claimed its computer was the first to achieve quantum supremacy, and Google claimed its computer solved a problem in less than 3.5 minutes, something that it would have taken the most powerful conventional supercomputer 10,000 years to do. The Chinese team didn't go quite that far in its new paper. Here's the quote: "We estimate that the sampling task finished by the computer in about 1.2 hours, 70 minutes, will take the most powerful supercomputer at least 8 years. The computational cost of the classic simulation of this task is estimated to be 2 to 3 orders of magnitude higher than the previous work on the 53-qubit Sycamore processor." And that one last quote: "While the usefulness of such calculations has yet to be translated for use in the real world, scientists were impressed by the results. I'm very excited by this," says Peter Knight at Imperial College London, who was not involved in the research. What this has done is really demonstrate that what we've always thought we knew, but we didn't prove experimentally that you can always beat a classical machine by adding more qubits. So that's the interesting realization, is that adding more qubits is a thing, and it makes it go faster and better, and number goes up. So we look forward to the world of quantum computers, which, as if tech wasn't already accelerating way beyond human capabilities of managing and controlling, wait till the quantum computers get involved. If you thought things were out of control already, you have no idea. So on that very happy note, we will join again in 5.5 hours. Please keep tweeting in the headlines to TNATW, and we will share them all with you again when we meet in 5.5 hours. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank
Happy
you, everyone.
Wednesday.